Tapos ngayon, sa monitor. Ayan.
Good afternoon. Here are our house rules and some announcements. Strictly no eating and drinking for attendees inside the auditorium. Water bottles and containers must be left at the lobby. The estimated running time of the program is 3.5 hours. During this time, may we request everyone to keep their mobile phones on silent mode. In case of emergency needing evacuation, please make an orderly exit towards the doors at the back. Those on front seats may exit through the doors by the side of the stage. Restrooms are located near the registration area. IBON Foundation's publications are on display in the lobby. Please find time to check them out. You may have your pictures taken at the photo booth in front of the registration area. We encourage everyone to post about the event on their social media accounts with the hashtags #IBON Birdtalk, #MarcosYear4, #SONA 2026, #PeopleEconomics. Refreshments will be served after the event. Thank you.
Nandito tayo ngayon sa opisina ng bagong alyansang makabayan kung saan nasasaksihan natin ang ginagawang paghahanda ng isang effigy para sa ilulunsad. Nandito tayo ngayon sa opisina ng bagong alyansang makabayan kung saan nasasaksihan natin ang ginagawang paghahanda ng isang effigy para sa ilulunsad na SONA ng Bayan 2026 at tampok dito ang isa sa kanilang mga panawagan na pagpapanagot sa lahat ng sangkot sa korupsyon. Dahil ano na nga ba ang nangyari isang taon mula nang i-anunsyo ni Pangulong Marcos ang anti-corruption campaign nito. Para sa anti-corruption groups, wala pa ring totoong nananagot mula sa katiwalian ng flood control projects, farm-to-market roads, at iba pa. At ngayong papalapit na ang 2028 elections, tila ginagamit na lang umano itong bala sa labanan sa politika. Ano ang say ng publiko rito?
Ayaw po nila masyadong tulungan tayo mga Pilipino.
Mas lalong lumala. Sobra. Kami mga nahihirapan sa mga ginawa nila.
Tuloy-tuloy ang korupsyon, kaya nga ma-impeach si Sara Duterte.
Abusong-abuso na talaga sa mga mamamayang Pilipino.
Ngayong taon, gumulong na muli ang impeachment trial laban kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Ayon sa grupong Bagong Alyansang Makabayan o Bayan, tagumpay ng taong bayan ang pagpapanagot sa Vice Presidente. Pero
tandaan din natin itong impeachment na ito, kaya umabot ng 2 taon at 2 beses pang kailangang i-file. Dahil nag-aalala siguro si Pangulong Marcos at iba pang mga corrupt na nasa gobyerno na kapag na-impeach si Sara, baka sila naman ang susunod.
dagdag ng grupo, tila ginagamit ng Pangulo ang impeachment ng Vice Presidente para pagtakpan ang sariling katiwalian. Pero lampas sa isyu ng korupsyon, binatikos ng grupo ang sistemang paggamit ng mga nakaupong opisyal sa kanilang pwesto para kumita at paboran ang mga kaalyado nila, kabilang na ang malalaking negosyante.
Hindi lang pera ang usapin dyan yung mga kontrata, mga concessions sa mga minahan, sa mga sakahan. Usapin dyan yung mga batas na magbibigay ng pabor, halimbawa sa pagmomonopolyo ng iilang korporasyon sa industriya ng kuryente, industriya ng langis.
Ang tawag dito, bureaucrat capitalism o ang pagpapalakad sa gobyerno bilang negosyo.
Ang mga katulad ng Marcos, mga Duterte, ang mga political dynasties, ang pangunahing mga burokrata kapitalista sa ating bansa. At ang kanilang mga amo ay ang tinatawag nating oligarchs, no? Yung malalaking burgesya komprador katulad ng mga Villar, Razon, Aboitiz, Ayala, San Miguel.
Ayon sa grupong bayan, kapalit ng mga proyektong iginagawad at pondo ng bayan na inilalaan ng Administrasyong Marcos Jr. sa mga kaibigan nito ang pagpapabaya sa mga pangangailangan ng mga Pilipino. Anila, imbes na libre o abot kaya ang mga social services gaya ng kalusugan, transportasyon, edukasyon at iba pa, minaniobra ng mga politiko at mga malalaking negosyante na pagkakitaan pa nila ang mga ito. Kaya para sa bayan, kasabay sa pagpapanagot sa mga korap na opisyal ay ang pagpapalit mismo ng sistemang nagpapahintulot na gamitin nila ang kanilang poder sa pansariling interes. Sa ikalimang State of the Nation address ni Pangulong Marcos Jr., makikiisa ang mga progresibong grupo sa panawagang lahat ng sangkot ay dapat managot.
Mahalaga talaga yung malawak na pagkilos ng mamamayan para magkaroon ng makabuluhang pagbabago sa isang lipunan. Tayo mismo ang gumawa ng hakbang para mapanagot ang mga opisyal at mabago ang bulok na sistema natin. Dahil kung iaasa natin yan sa mga politikong nasa pwesto, wala rin mangyayari. At hindi natin makakamit ang pagpapanagot at ang tunay na pagbabago.
Ito si Ruth Riamilio ng PUP The Catalyst, nag-uulat para sa Alab SONA Special.
Isa sa siguradong ipagmamalaki ng Marcos Jr. Administration sa darating na SONA ang patuloy umanong paglago ng ekonomiya ng bansa. Pero hindi makakaila na, on the ground, damang-dama ng ating mga kababayan ang ibang level ng kahirapan. Hindi makarelate ang ordinaryong taong bayan sa anunsyong upper middle income ang status ng Pilipinas. Paano naman kasi, sa presyo pa lang ng bilihin at serbisyo, hindi na makaagapay ang mga Pilipino sa sobrang bilis ng pagsirit nito. Tumaas rin ang bilang ng mga Pilipino nagsabing mahirap sila. Mula 12.2 million noong 2022, naging 14.5 million nitong 2026. Ayon sa grupong IBON, patunay itong hindi tanda ng pag-unlad ang pinagmamalaking bagong status ng bansa.
Kapag tiningnan nga natin yung GDP growth nitong unang quarter ng 2026, lumalabas na tayo ang may pinakamababang paglago sa Southeast Asia. Tayo rin ang may pinakamataas na unemployment, tayo ang may pangatlong pinakamataas na inflation rate. Diyan pa lang makikita na natin na yung status, yung unique status ay hindi rin ramdam ng mismong ekonomiya at ng ating mismong mga kababayan.
So kung hindi totoo ang di umanong impressive economic performance ng bansa, paano ba ilalarawan ang ekonomiya? Sabi ng grupo, kakarag-karag ang totoong lagay ng ekonomiya at hindi lang dahil sa oil price shock na dulot ng US-Iran war. Matagal na umanong ganito ang tunguhin ng ekonomiya na sobrang nakaasa sa global economy at pinalalala ng mga neoliberal na polisiya ng pamahalaan.
Kasi yung development model ng gobyerno o ng Pilipinas ay nananatili pa rin doon sa pag-attract ng foreign investment, pag-asa sa exports, pag-asa sa trabaho abroad, ganyan. So hindi yan indicator ng development.
Pagdating naman sa kabuhayan, tinawag ng grupo na ang lala ng employment sa bansa. Tansya ng grupo, nadagdagan pa ng halos 500,000 ang bilang ng unemployed na Pilipino ngayong taon. Kaya tumaas ito mula 2 milyon noong May 2025 patungong 2.5 milyon ngayong 2026. Mas kadusta-dusta nila ang kalagayan ng mga lugar sa labas ng NCR. Sa sektor ng pagsasaka, marami ang pinipiling hindi na magtanim dahil sa sobrang pagkalugi at kawalan ng suporta mula sa pamahalaan.
ay tumas lalo ang gastos namin sa palayan dahil walang irigasyon. May irigasyon dyan pero wala namang tubig kaya kailangan namin gumastos, bumili ng gasolina para magpatubig sa aming palayan. Alos wala akong naani. Kulang sa pambayad dahil wala tatlong kaban lang ang naani ko dyan. Kulang pambayad sa inutangan at may utang pa na hindi nababayaran.
Sa gitna ng kawalan ng kabuhayan at sinasabing karag-karag na ekonomiya, sapat ba ang naging tugon ng pamahalaan? Tinanong natin ang ating mga kababayan.
Nakukulangan ako. Alam mo kung bakit? Tapos na nga yung gera pero yung pagtaas ng petrolyo hindi pa rin nagbabago. Lalong tumaas. Apektado ako ng sobra sa taas gasolina na yan. Naiwan natin kung bakit hindi na bumaba.
Lahat puro mataas. Pamasahe. Kahit sinabi niyang hindi tataas, maas pa rin. Mataas ang gasolina, mataas ang presyo ng pagkain.
Sang-ayon ng IBON na walang responsable at komprehensibong plano ang Marcos Jr. Administration para totoong bumuti ang lagay ng ekonomiya. Ang tanong, ano nga ba ang dapat maging tugon ng pamahalaan para dito?
Magkaroon ka ng isang plano para sa ekonomiya na magpapakatatag talaga siya kahit anong nangyayari sa pandaigdigang ekonomiya. No? Paano yun? Ibig sabihin ay magkaroon ka ng isang pamumuhunan. No? Yung estado ay dapat may pamumuhunan siya sa pagpapaunlad ng industriya, pagpapaunlad ng agrikultura, kasi yan yung mga lilikha ng trabaho.
Solusyon sa problema ng magsasaka, una, ipamahagi ng libre ang lupa sa mga magsasaka, sapat na suporta sa produksyon katulad ng binhi, abono, makina at irigasyon para patuloy na makapagtanim ng pagkain hindi lang para sa pamilya pati na rin sa buong bansa nang hindi nababaon sa utang kaming mga magsasaka.
Dito si Reynard Magtoto ng Baretang Bicolnon, nag-uulat para sa Alab SONA Special.
Good afternoon. Here are our house rules and some announcements. Strictly no eating and drinking for attendees inside the auditorium. Water bottles and containers must be left at the lobby. The estimated running time of the program is 3.5 hours. During this time, we request everyone to keep their mobile phones on silent mode. In case of emergency needing evacuation, please make an orderly exit towards the doors at the back. Those on front seats may exit through the doors by the side of the stage. Restrooms are located near the registration area. IBON Foundation's publications are on display in the lobby. Please find time to check them out. You may have your pictures taken at the photo booth in front of the registration area. We encourage everyone to post about the event on their social media accounts with the hashtags #IBONBirdtalk, #MarcosYear4, #SONA2026, #PeopleEconomics. Refreshments will be served after the event. Thank you.
upper middle income consider themselves poor.
Dagdag singil sa kuryente.
Sa ngalan ng ayuda,
rising prices of petroleum.
Enrique Razon coming on top.
De La Rosa at large
Concedes the chamber's leadership.
balikatan exercises.
The U.S.-led tax silicon
Will be blooded.
Tuntukan na ang pamumurakot.
Good afternoon. Today is July 23, 2026. Welcome to the 2026 IBON Mid-Year Bird Talk. Please welcome our host, Audrey De Jesus.
Hello? Okay. I'm back. So magandang hapon sa inyong lahat at welcome to the 2026 IBON Mid-Year Bird Talk. First of all, before we begin or go into our program, we would just like to acknowledge our co-presenters for today's events and for making today's forum possible. So the UP School of Economics Student Council, the UP Student Council, UP Office of the Student Regent, UP Office of the Faculty Regent, the All-UP Academic Employees Union, and our official media partner, Altermedia. Thank you. Thank you for co-presenting with us. And of course, we are currently live on Facebook on the pages of IBON Foundation, IBON iPad, and IBON Bookshop, as well as the pages of our partners for this event, who we thank for bringing Bird Talk to a wider audience. So let's just acknowledge our partners for today's event: AGHAM, Advocates of Science and Technology for the People; Alliance for Consumer Protection; Ateneo Edge, or the education geared towards empowerment; Luntiang Bayan; ILER, Ecumenical Institute for Labor Education and Research; Filipino Free Thinkers; Inclusivo; Living Laudato Si; Mismo, or Make It Safer Movement; Masipag, or Magsasaka at Scientifico para sa pag-unlad ng agrikultura; UP Los Baños College of Economics and Management Student Council; UP Samasa Alumni; Propel, Pro People Engineers and Leaders; Regeneration Initiative, or WeGen; Agroecology X, Para Commuters Network; Bunyog, College Editors Guild of the Philippines; Daang Docu, Likas News, Philippine Collegian, Pinoy Media Center, Pinoy Weekly, Radyo Katipunan, UP Los Baños Tanglao, The Staple, Rappler, and Good Food. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. Thank you again, bringing us to a wider audience. And we also have some of them here in the audience with us today. So if you're posting today's forum on social media, please use our official event hashtags, hashtag Birdtalk, hashtag IBON Birdtalk, hashtag SONA 2026, at hashtag People Economics. Okay. So how many of you are new to IBON Birdtalk today? Raise your hands. Yeah, that's so nice to see a lot of newcomers, but of course it's also nice to see a lot of familiar faces with us today. So for those of you who are new to Birdtalk, or maybe nakalimutan nyo ba ano ang Birdtalk? Birdtalk is basically a biannual forum where IBON shares its analysis on urgent socioeconomic and political issues that the country is facing today. So for today's program in particular, we will be having two inputs. The first input will be focused on navigating global instability for national development. And the second input will focus on unraveling vested interests in policymaking. And From our partners, we will have two reactors today that will give their thoughts on the inputs presented, followed by a cultural performance by Mara Peralta. And after that, we'll enter the discussion and open forum portion of the forum. And then this will be followed by cultural performance by Chikoy Pura. And after that, we will have a closing and picture taking of all of us, the participants and speakers here today. So to move on and to start learning more about the IBON's analysis of the national situation today, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. He finished his master's degree in development studies and his bachelor's degree in philosophy and economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science. To Jose Enrique Sunny Africa, IBON Executive Director.
Patanggalan mo yung mukha ko. Magandang hapon. Hindi ko lang po nag-apply ako sa School of Econ at na-reject ako. So, ito lang. Sige. Excuse me. SONA na in a couple of days. Tapos yung IBON, particularly important yung IBON Birdtalk briefing before the SONA. Kasi usually, ewan ko sa inyo, if you follow IBON, medyo non-stop naman kami dun sa mga day-to-day issues. Pero for us particular, very welcome yung moments ng mid-year and year starter. Kasi all those mga small things, parang pwedeng ipagtagpi-tagpi. Sometimes kasi it's hard to talk about the big things habang we're dealing with the mga day-to-day issues. So hopefully, yung presentations namin ni Rosby will help give us a moment to take a longer view of things, see the underlying dynamics in play in the Philippines, but in particular yung part ko, thank you, in particular yung part ko, look at things, the Philippine context in a broader perspective to see the larger forces in play. Kasi these are things that sometimes not talked about on a day-to-day basis, lalo na with the narrowing of attention spans, tapos yung all the political noise from the mga, or political stuff. Super basic yung flow ng i-share ko. Basically, things are bad. Huwag kayo matawa. Things are bad. Things are actually getting worse. And things will probably get worse. That's not a crystal ball for despair. That is an attempt to point out what needs to be done. The world is really changing rapidly. Hindi ko ito sinasabi dahil medyo matanda na ako. But feeling ko talaga once in a while, in our lives, we don't always come across mga big shifts in the world. But I think anyone who's over 50 right now can probably sense na the last few years, things are changing talaga in the world. So hopefully I'll give a brief outline about some of the major changes in the world underway, with of course direct implications of Philippines. The concern, of course, is that with things changing in the world, the Philippines should change its approach as well, in particular our development strategies. That's where a point of despair comes from, kasi the administration, despite such dramatic geopolitical, geoeconomic shifts worldwide, is still kind of stuck in the past. And that's where the problem lies. It's stuck in the past in terms of what kind of domestic policies are going to be implemented. It's stuck in the past about seeing what are the changes in the world. So unfortunately, I think that is working to the detriment of the Philippine economy and the Filipino people. So hindi to point of despair, but yun nga, it's a point of clarification to sort of hopefully help guide us in our day-to-day work. IBON doesn't pretend naman to have perfect knowledge of everything, so we kind of look forward especially to the mga Birdtalk briefings, for the open forums, for the mga nasty messages and texts, kasi we do want we are very open. We do want to evolve our own thinking as best as we can. Grabe, like 3 minutes na ako. Nag-blur lang ako. Anyway. Oh my God, it's me. Okay yan. Of course, it's hard to talk about this upper middle income nonsense. So just to sort of get this out of the way, I'm actually hoping Bongbong says something about us being an upper middle income country sa kanyang SONA kasi that's gonna blow up in his face. But just to put sort of, para masara na yung usapin na to, yes, the Philippines was categorized an upper middle income country with the World Bank, but it's just a statistical classification. Kinuha yung gross national income natin, dinivide with the population, through that statistical arithmetical computation, nag-jump tayo from here to there. So pasang-awa tayo. So what does upper middle income mean? These are all the countries in the world, 201 countries monitored by the World Bank. That's Burundi there, that's Bermuda there. The height is the gross national income per capita, $240 for Burundi, $4.8 for the Philippines, 14,000 global average. The only thing that happened was arithmetical computation, we jumped, we already classified, that's it. So in a lot of ways, yung tanong, naramdaman ba ang upper middle income? We don't feel an arithmetical computation. So 3 points lang to sort of get this upper middle income stuff out of the way. Unang-una, these are all 201 countries monitored by the World Bank. Despite whatever hype we might have heard from the Philippine government, the Philippines is still in the bottom 1/3 poorest countries in the world. So point number one. Point number two, even our hyped $4,850, that's only about 1/3 of the global average. It's 1/30th of the richest country. So even that actually isn't very high. Third point, this is actually measured development. Okay, may kind of correlation minsan, the higher the income level, the higher the levels of human welfare, human development, but this does not measure development. And I think the most important point, the third point, so to completely demolish the idea that this upper middle income thing means anything, it just measures growth, but the journey matters. What kind of growth did we undertake to make that pasang-awa leap from the blue category to orange category? The kind of growth path we took was a growth path where Philippine production, in particular Philippine agriculture, has fallen to its smallest share of the economy in the country's history. Manufacturing has fallen to its smallest share in almost 8 decades, since 1949. So ang growth path natin, yeah, economic output was expanding, but it wasn't economic output in the most important foundational elements of the economy, agriculture and industry. If anything, we're reaching historic lows. Second important point about this slide, this blue line measures the combination of the main production sectors of the economy: agriculture, manufacturing, construction, and mining. This is the time when the World Bank, the ones who classified this as upper middle income, this was the time, 1979, when the World Bank negotiated our first structural adjustment program. All the neoliberal globalization nonsense, liberalization, privatization, deregulation, the first formal program we had in the Philippines from that was with the World Bank SAP in 1979, negotiated 79, finalized in 1980. It's not a coincidence that all the liberalization, deregulation, privatization policies implemented since then, that's behind the collapse in production, behind the collapse in manufacturing, behind the continuing collapse in agriculture. That's so important kasi it's 50 years later. So parang hindi matuto dun sa naging experience natin dyan, that's kind of going to be a bit weird. So point number one, why does that upper middle income not mean anything? Kasi the growth actually hasn't meant anything because there was no qualitative transformation in the Philippine economy. If anything, that is a backsliding in the most important sectors for economic development. I'm so sorry, maraming numbers. Buti medyo maliit yung venue. But this table This table just lists Filipino families. You more or less estimate ng IBON of the net worth of each Filipino family and their monthly income. How many families, how many by population, adjusted by family size yan. I won't go into detail kasi marami pang sasabihin. Point lang, GNI divided by population doesn't really measure household income. Pero kung patulan natin yon, is the Philippines an upper middle income country in the sense na most Filipinos are upper middle income? Clearly hindi. In the Philippines, okay maganda, here, our characterization on the contrary, the Philippines has to be called a poor and low income country. Why? Number one, 62% of the population are in families that earn less than 22,000 pesos a month. So that's about 14.4 million families with 70 million Filipinos. So majority of families and majority of Filipinos are actually in that category under 22,000. So sa pag-categorize, majority wins. So poor low income tayo. Things aren't much better if you add the tawag namin lower middle class between 22 to 36,000. Kasi even by that, a bit more stricter definition, 96 million Filipinos are in families earning 36,000 pesos or less a day. So sa amin, more than the growth blah, more than the income classifications, what's the economy for? Is it creating enough incomes for Filipinos to have a decent life? Majority are poor, low income. An overwhelming majority are poor, low income, and lower middle class. So, hindi tayo upper middle income. We have to really get over this growth obsession. I mean, it's nice to have a number, measure performance, it's faster now, slower now, faster kay Bongbong, slower kay Duterte, ganyan. But actually, oddly, it's surprising for many, the economy isn't about growth. The economy is about the welfare of people working in that economy. And actually, you can have fast economic growth, but have people left behind. This chart shows fast economic growth, but the people left behind. This is gross domestic product per capita, approximation in GNI per capita. The red line is self-rated poverty according to SWS. 2 points I want to highlight. In the highest growth period, 2005 to 2016, we were 5.7% average growth over the 5% historical average. Fastest economic growth in recorded Philippine history. Self-rated poverty actually declined over that period of high growth. Even if you add the rebound after the pandemic, actually from 46% self-rated poverty in 2004, self-rated poverty in March 2026 increased to 52%. So highlight lang, let's not get so obsessed about growth, but what does it mean for the people? Growth has become faster, but it hasn't helped the people because on the contrary, the magnitude of poor increased, the percentage of poor also increased. So yun ang point about this slide. Ito yung pinaka-segment dun sa global context. It's always been said by the government the last few months, growth is slowing because of the flood control scandal, because we're more careful about infra spending. Growth is slowing because of the US attack on Iran and then the oil price shock. That's partly true lamang kasi growth has been slowing since 2017. I think that's important kasi if you don't see the long-term drivers of slow growth, we will mistake anti-corruption issues and energy issues as the main cause of the slowdown. This chart shows the decline in economic growth since the peak in 2016. May decline siya, medyo natago with the pandemic, but generally it has been in decline. Ito rebound kasi yan from there, so that doesn't really count. So if you kind of squint a bit, you'll see economic growth slowing from 2016 all the way down to where we are right now, and projected even slower growth this year, and in all likelihood next year. Trivia, 9 out of 10 of announced government growth targets are always overstated. So huwag kayo masyadong mabilib sa mga projections na yon. Ang big question for us is, why has economic growth been slowing since 2017? We'd argue, pigang-piga na, super exhausted na itong bankrupt, obsolete Philippine growth model relying on free market economics, etc., etc. Why? Because the main drivers of growth over 2004 until 2016 wasn't a vibrant economy, wasn't vibrant agriculture or vibrant industry. What really drove that fast growth over that period were four things: expanding wage work, more money circulating the economy, overseas remittances increasing. For a period of time, exports and foreign investment was actually increasing. And finally, the government was spending a lot. These four drivers, wage work, remittances, external impulse, and fiscal stimulus, from 2017, may papel naman sa Birdtalk paper doon, they all started weakening. So, yung cause ng growth slowdown wasn't the anti-corruption campaign, wasn't the energy shock, it was nawala na yung real drivers of growth, which are very temporary in the absence of strong agriculture and strong industry. The most that can be said, yung flood control scandals at pag-iingat ng mga government agencies to spend aggravated that. Energy shock, of course, also aggravated that. But even without those two things, the economy has been slowing because the growth model ay exhausted. Ito, patulero lang dun sa how are things now under Bongbong. SWS, if the government had come out more frequently and more timely with poverty data, we could use that. But mas may sense of social responsibility ang isang private outfit. In 2022, self-rated poverty was 43%, increasing to 52% in March. That translates to a 2.3 million increase in poverty to 14.5 million. Even worse, involuntary hunger more than doubled, 12% to almost over 23%. That's a 3.6 million more involuntary hungry people since the start of the Marcos administration. So, ano lang yan. Of course, the point lang, hindi yung growth na nagmamatter eh. Whatever direction growth goes, we wouldn't complain if jobs were created, incomes were high, people were prosperous, everyone was well-fed, but that wasn't happening. Okay. Last point about why that growth has been exclusionary, because that growth was concentrated not in agriculture or industry, but in kinda low productivity, low job generating sectors. Trade, real estate, construction niya, pero momentary yun. Finance, high value but maliit. BPOs, well, right now threatened by AI, and labor export. This is first one of the most important conclusions to draw from the Philippine growth model. The Philippine growth model is an underdeveloped model because right now, latest data as of May, the government reports 2.5 million unemployed. Totoong bilang, if you count those they took out by adding criteria na should have looked for a job in the last 6 months, should be available for work in the next 2 weeks. By adding those two methodological changes, about 2 million Filipinos jobless were erased from the unemployed figures. Sa amin, for comparability with previous decades to see actually where the trends are, the real number of unemployed is actually 4.5 million. If you want to count unpaid family workers as part of that, that increase is 7.9. So, key point number one, unemployment is high, but it's actually even worse than officially reported. Key point number two, it's not even enough to be employed. There's about 49, 50 million employed Filipinos right now, but most of their jobs are really bad. They pay low, insecure siya, walang benefits, walang kontrata. We estimate 8 out of 10 employed Filipinos are actually informals, meaning self-employed, own family farm business, domestics in households, plus our estimate of about 90 million wage workers, pero in informal establishments beyond the scope of DOLE and all the regulations. So actually 39 million Filipinos are employed but are informals. And I think this actually explains very well why official figures seem nice, job creation seems kind of respectable, not so high, but people are still poor. Because with the kind of economy we have, with the kind of economic structure and jobs being created, it turns out having a job isn't enough anymore to lift you out of poverty. So key point din yan kasi the labor force figure should be taken at face value. This next point is something we really want to highlight. Si Bongbong marami siyang record setting. Isang record setting sa kanya, the most volatile word as far as records allow. On any given month-to-month basis, employment can drop by 4.6 million or increase by 3.4 million. Grabing volatility yan. At sa maraming Pilipino, is no work, no pay. May magsasabi, lalo may economist. Pero may seasonality kasi. Sige, even taking seasonality into consideration, employment can drop by as much as 2.8 million or increase by almost 6 million. Bottom line, kung volatile yung work, volatile yung kita ng family. Sana, seasonal din yung paggastos ng pamilya. But fortunately, hindi. So this actually reflects how bad the work situation is. Ang baba na ng kita mo is uncertain pa actually if you will have work in the coming period. And sa amin, in its entirety, this explains the increasing poverty despite the increasing growth. Last point, nakilala namin singit because of the looming 85 peso first give in, I think Sunday, and then the next give sa January. This measures regional wages across all regions. Average wage, minimum wage right now is worth 21% less than in 1989. So, ang dami-daming growth since 1989, ang dami-daming increase in economic output, ang dami-daming yumaman, but if you look at minimum wages, they're worth less, 21% less now than in 1989. So, kung 89 pesos na minimum wage noong 1989, that's basically saying 70 pesos na lang halaga ng minimum wage today. Exception yung NCR. Siguro, it is a political choice. Mas mabait ba yung mga negosyante sa NCR? Probably not. But because it's a political choice, NCR is where, well, government, national agencies are, national media is here, concentration of unions, concentration of activists and protesters. Dito, the discrepancy where a little bit 7% increase in the value of NCR, that's not economic, that's political. So para sa amin, that highlights na even yung 85 pesos na binigay ngayon, if it's not given to the other regions, which actually need it much more than NCR, clearly political choice yun. Okay. Oh my God. 20 minutes na. Hindi ako titignan doon. Ito yung main meat ng share namin. I think for those who follow IBON, alam nila yung first 20 minutes na yan. But I think important to start from that to establish the premises kasi this is where the problem lies. May problema yung ekonomiya natin from all these really awful globalization policies. But actually, there's some super fundamental shifts happening ngayon in the global context. Two I want to highlight in terms of having direct relevance to the economic situation. We can mention halimbawa, nalaman ko lang last year. Right now, the world has the most armed conflicts involving states since World War II. So if you want to talk about geopolitical volatility, ganun karaming armed conflicts, nandito pa yung sa Iran, that's a key element of that. But focusing on the major shifts dun sa economy with relevance to our desire for economic development, two things lang. The data show sluggish global growth, trade and investment. So any economic model na umaasa sa exports, sa foreign investment, that's a dead end. Well, dead end na before, but it's an even deader end right now kasi yung inaasahan na boost from the outside, that's not gonna happen. Second, policy-wise, sobrang important, may big power protectionism. I mean, globalization has always been two-faced naman. The big powers want us to open up, while they remain protective when they need to, kung may crisis or whatever. Pero right now, even yun, that's out the window. Right now, very notable is yung dati sa World Trade Organization, most agreements, they all have a national security exception. So kumbaga, we will follow these trade agreements, these investment agreements, except if it involves national security. But one thing that's been very striking since the mid-2008, national security has been defined to include economic security. So yung national security exception just became the rule because the big powers, the US, China, Europe, they've all declared economic security is a matter of national security. So, sweeping statement that basically binabasura na all these 4 decades of free trade agreements, all the mga bilateral agreements, mag-love tayo, open up tayo, kasi the 3 big powers account for about 2/3 of global industry. They've just said, nope, we're going to do what we want to because it's in our national security. So may particular application siya in terms of national industrialization. China, not bothered about that as much as the US. US talaga nag-decline, but even the EU is bothered by yung deindustrialization niya. Charts lang about the slowing growth, much slower now compared to before. Flat trade, itong blip na yan last year, aberration yan, that's only because a lot of firms front-loaded yung inventories nila because of Trump's psychotic tariffs, but bababayan ulit this year. Foreign investment, magnitudes, percent of GDP, flat, going down. So yun lang the numbers to show nga na the global capitalist economy, no problema talaga siya. It's not as vibrant, dynamic as before, causing all the problems, also driving the big powers to become more protectionist. Oh my God, ba't nagwala eh? It's not supposed to be like that, so ignore that na lang. Ito yung year-to-year application, focus on this na lang. Oh my God, doesn't make sense. Ito ay, the green shows accumulated protectionist policies since 2009. Yung red, accumulated liberalization policies in trade since 2009. Clearly, since 2009, there have been more protectionist policies than liberalization policies. May bias pa yan. Marami dito ay nasa industrial powers, marami dito sa Global South. To drill down, out of 64,000 protectionist measures applied since 2008, yung G7 accounts for 27,000, 30%. The BRICS countries account for 24%. So over half of all these measures now concentrate in the biggest economies of the world, including the most advanced industrial powers, US tsaka China. US with 12%, China 9%. So front-running ang US and China in implementing protectionist measures. So, yeah, medyo weird lang. Sabihin sa atin, magbukas tayo, but sila hindi na. Before, tinatago pa nila yan, but since the Obama administration, binibilitate na talaga yung WTO eh. So talagang hindi pa yata nag-bayad ng juice, hindi lang sa UN, even sa WTO ang US just to debilitate them. So, key point yan, increasing protectionism, especially by the big powers. I'm going to rush through investment lang yan. Main point, I think, super big shift that's unprecedented in the last maybe 50 years. When the US, China, and the EU all formally declared economic security is a matter of national security, especially in terms of industrialization policies. Actually, nauna na dyan China. China talaga medyo far-thinking siya. As early as their 11th five-year plan in 2006, sabi na nila yan. Not in so many words, sabi na nila yan. They also identified as early as 2006, semiconductors, biotechnology, naglista na sila. The mga key industries they will protect, they will support, they will make sure that China, in 30 years' time, is the most advanced in these particular fields. So, pinto pa dyan in subsequent five-year plans. But yung US, first we heard of it was nung national security strategy nila in 2017, there was that explicit declaration. Followed soon after by the EU, in-implement muna yung kanilang FDI screening, but then by 2020, nag-formal declaration na rin sila. Ang point lang being, these are the most advanced industrial powers in the world, But because of, again, mahabang kwento yung mahabang story yon, but because of their compulsion to protect, support their own national industries, they made it a part of their formal economic policy and national security strategies. You'll notice even sa list na to, semiconductors, top of mind talaga yan eh. Siguro kinopen nila yung 11th five-year plan ng China. Yung US, nag-Chips and Science Act, I think, if I remember, $340 billion worth of subsidies yata yan in 2022. Ginaya ng EU in 2023. May critical minerals pa din. Main point lang dyan is, all that mga nakasanayan ng marami na World Trade Organization, Free Trade Agreements, ASEAN, love, open up, that world's over. Especially because the biggest powers have always been pushing hardest for that, hindi na tenable sa kanila. And it's been so untenable to pretend with that deceit of neoliberal globalization. Actually, nagulat kami, in February of this year, yung World Bank, nagmea culpa na siya. Sabi niya, in a March or February 2026 report, ay sorry, yung pagsabi namin na industrial policy is bad, mali pala yun. So the same bank na in the 1960s, 70s told South Korea, huwag kayong maniwala dyan sa protect your steel industry. The same bank na sabi sa Pilipinas, Marcos, national industrial, 11 industrial projects, kalokohan yan. Last, a few months ago, mea culpa, mali pala yun. So it's not because nagka-epiphany sila, but because the US, of course, needs that kind of intellectual propaganda justification for something that they were already doing before. Pero super important to as a big shift in the global context. That's why it makes it so much more glaring na yung Philippines, ang kulit talaga man, they're still doing the opposite. This lists all the FTAs, liberalization, deregulation, privatization, the major laws and policies along those areas since the late 1970s, early 1980s. Yung naka-yellow, all the mga Marcos initiatives. I won't go through in detail. You can ask the man, you can get the PowerPoint. The main point is, ang kulit, the Philippine government is doing the exact opposite of what the biggest economic powers are doing. As feel pa nila, nagpapasikit pa sila na sila yung mangunguna sa ASEAN to push that kind of liberalization agenda. So it's so absurd for two reasons. One, super fail. Yung pagbagsak ng agriculture, pagbagsak ng manufacturing, paglaki ng bilang walang trabaho, pagtulak ng Pilipino abroad, pagbagsak ng kita, paglala ng informality, paglala ng volatility, that's all because of the cumulative effect ng free trade agreements, all the shons pinapatupad over the last 40 years. Pero walang kadala-dala yung administrasyon, dinagdagan pa niya. At proud pa siya. Nag-economic roadshow siya. Hindi ko alam kung Pilipinas na nagaganyan anyway. So, yun ang key point, the Marcos administration is doing the exact opposite, hindi lang of what's needed, but of what the big powers are doing. So that doesn't make sense. Second point, maliban sa oblivious yung administration to the damage all these have caused, oblivious din siya sa ginagawa ng US, China, Europe ngayon. So parang wala siyang Google o baka walang tiwala sa AI, sa chat. Drilling down particularly sa Philippines, it does matter. It matters so much kasi may problema na for the Philippines insisting on this opening up nonsense. So, problema na yon. Pero, another way na stuck in the past yung Pilipinas, stuck na siya sa mundo ng neoliberal globalization, stuck din siya sa pagiging kolonya ng US. Kasi, amid opening up, nag-open up na siya, tapos dumikit pa siya sa US. And it's so absurd kasi very clear at very well stated yung objectives ng US sa Pilipinas. Whether policy statements nila or mga interviews, pronouncements. There are two main interrelated reasons for the US to have so much more interest sa Pilipinas ngayon. Una, military staging area versus China. May konting sa mga matanda na dito, si Ka Judy nandito. Yung mga medyo nakaalala nung panahon ng Clark and Subic, essentially basing lang, nakakonsentra in Clark and Subic, naparaming sundalo, napakaraming war material. We've moved beyond that. May qualitative change na. Hindi lang tayo tambakan ng war material, pwestuhan ng troops on a rotating basis. We're now also actively a staging area for missile and drone strikes. Nag-establish ng command and control over US forces operating sa West Philippine Sea at South China Sea. Tapos, hindi na siya ginagawa in Clark or in Subic, ginagawa siya nationwide. So awful talaga yon. Nag-expand na the expectations sa Pilipinas as a military extension. Ikalawa, in-extend pa sa buong Pilipinas by design. Kasi na-realize ng US, delikado to put all your eggs in 2 baskets, Clark and Subic. So by design, kinalit nila yung 9 EDCA sites, kinalit nila yung mga fuel depot dito, munitions dyan, warehouse dito. It's intentionally spread across the archipelago to make it harder to target by yung precision strikes ng China. Kaya din, ewan ko napansin yung mga press release, ang weird eh, parang proud na proud sila. 3 US Marine trucks nakapag-roro from Davao to Samar. So, first time I saw it, parang, what the F? What's so grand about nakapag-roro siya? It turns out, that's because the US wants the whole Philippines as a base na spread out. Kaya kailangan yung infrastructure na yon at kailangan niya yung mga scattered sites as a protection against yung US sites, Chinese strikes. Pero second, ito yung mas economic aspect niya, yung term of defense industrial base, I don't know if anyone else had used it before, pero first time ko na nakita sa US. Clearly, the US wants the Philippines as a defense industrial base. What does that mean? It identified the US certain key activities na kailangan ng kanyang military strategy. Nakalista to in official documents. Munitions, shipbuilding, repair and maintenance, logistics hubs, semiconductors, AI, critical minerals, dual-use technologies, military infra. Kung kind of familiar, ang daming nagawa sa Pilipinas ngayon kasi identify yan 10 years ago na kailangan ng US. Smart naman yung US, but confirm halimbawa ba yung nangyari dito sa US attack on Iran, even yung ginagawa sa Ukraine ng Russia, yung warfare ngayon, kailangan real-time nandun kayo. You can't just always be shipping your munitions from the US. At hindi rin pwede nakakalat in particular sites doon. Because ang laki ng demands for high-intensity warfare. You have to produce quickly, you have to produce at scale, and you don't have time to transport across the oceans. The US said, we need an expansive Indo-Pacific defense industrial base para anytime may gera, of course Indo-Pacific, that's circling China, anytime may attacks anywhere, madali sa kanila gumalaw. And that's an official plan by the US and the Philippines, very convinced sa kanya, particularly for our location, because ever since naman nung turn of the century, gusto talaga yung Pilipinas because of proximity to China. But ang meron ng Philippines, the usual, location, exceptional talaga as an archipelago where we are. Yung labor natin, national resources, including critical minerals, energy, water, and of course, access to military. Pero ito yung isang important point. As a defense industrial base, it's a key part of US economic security, but also a key part of national security and military objectives. So ano man nilatang defense industrial base ng US, i-ensure talaga niya super tightly controlled yung technologies and operations. Otherwise, hindi mag-serve dun sa overlying, underlying, overarching, anyway, dominant military strategic objectives niya. At that's where the problem for the Philippines lies. Kasi ang linaw-linaw ng gusto ng US. Ang linaw-linaw ng plano niya, including for developing its own supply chains in all those things, including semiconductors, AI. Kung yung Pilipinas, walang kahalintulad na kalinawan kung anong gusto gawin, na independent of the US, matatangay lang tayo. And if you look at so many, I think, again, unprecedented in terms of yung scope ng agreements, ang daming mga economic-related bilateral agreements ang US and the Philippines na naka-fold din yung military defense na priorities niya. So I'm just listing the mga statement of principle for Indo-Pacific Central Base, etc. Marami about the Philippines, meron din about their US-Philippines Defense Industrial, blah, blah, blah. So all these documents, taken all together, they basically say the US wants this from the Philippines, and the US will give that. And that is not going to be working for our favor kasi whether panahon ng kolonyalismo or imperialismo, foreign powers never wanted the best for their vassal states. So ang gusto gawin sa Pilipinas, frontline state tayo because of our location, proximity to China and Taiwan and the West Philippine Sea. So we're literally a frontline state kasi nagbabanggaan yung bases ng China sa West Philippine Sea at yung bases ng US, the whole Philippines and EDCA sites. At the same time, part tayo ng network nila for their defense industrial production. So, ang laki ng propulsion for the US to dominate the Philippines in that regard. The other day lang yata or kahapon, or kahapon, kaya ba si Marco Rubio? Kahapon ba? The other day, di ba? Okay. Ang weird talaga, may stupid press release ang PIA about, they talked about LEC and Pax Silica. President Marcos said he's looking forward to it. It will develop the Philippine economy. Siyempre, super nonsense yun. Pero bakit siya super nonsense? Unang-una, they're here for them, not for us. Pero, again, not going to much speculation, actual experience. Intel, 1974, parang luma na, no? Intel, their second foreign manufacturing plant in the world sa Pilipinas. Yung first, I think, was Malaysia. Yung second sa either Makati or Cavite yun, in 1974. They were here until 2009 for 35 years. Nag-invest ng $1.5 billion. Siyempre, laki-laki na nun. At one point, in 2008, the year before they left, $5 billion worth of exports, thousands of jobs, 1,800. Yan ang mga headline figures palagi, di ba? When you talk about foreign investors, how much investments? How much exports? How much jobs? They were here for 35 years, Intel, the Frontier semicon firm. Impake siya in 2008, went to Vietnam, I think Malaysia. Meron ba tayong any kind of Filipino electronics industry? Wala. And, oh no, hindi ako mag-eye contact. Wala because the Philippine governments created a foreign investment regime all about we want more FDI, we want more exports, pagmamalaki nila jobs, but walang kinuhang pakinabang para sa Philippine economy. So whether we're talking about Intel, semiconductor, pinaka-advanced ng time na yun, na tabunan ng NVIDIA, whether we're talking about Intel semiconductors, Hanjin shipbuilding, same kind of hype palagi yan, or even Malampaya, same kind of hype. In the end, pag umalis yung mga firms na yan, we have no Filipino electronics industry, we have no shipbuilding industry, we have no natural gas industry. And that was the case then, and that will be the case now with our current laws. But it's going to be worse. It's going to be worse kasi kung case study yan in how we're not going to be benefiting from any firm coming here, no matter how high-tech Intel was at the time, it's going to be worse kasi yung Pax Silica, parang chicken pox, it's not about us. It's about the US. Ito yung 23 countries, including 24th ng US, ito yung 25 countries nasa Pax Silica. Ito yung semiconductor supply chain. Raw materials, intermediate materials, the design stage, yung chip architecture, building the equipment to build chips, building chips, wafer fabrication, pinaka-low-end, low-value, assembly testing packaging. Every country may papel in that supply chain. Yung Pilipinas may papel din. Ito tayo. Raw materials, yung most likely nickel copper, supposedly may ilang rare earth tayo. Tapos, assembly testing packaging. So two problems. Una, general comment, it's all about the US. When the US drew up their Pax Silica effort, it was to make sure na all these countries can ensure a supply chain controlled by the US, providing the most advanced semiconductors they need, the most advanced AI they want, to compete, especially with China, but to dominate the industry and global economies. So yun ang overall context. There are two major points. Una, yung Pilipinas, it's kind of the least value-adding portions. Extraction of materials, tapos assembly testing packaging. Pero, making it worse, hindi man Filipino firms yung magpo-process ng materials, kung meron nga ilagay dito. Hindi naman Filipino firms right now ang nag-undertake ng assembly testing packaging. They're here, they're in the Philippines, in the same way that Intel was in the Philippines for 35, I'm crazy. Yeah. They will be here in the same way that Intel was here for 35 years, but they're not Filipino. At sa amin yun ang key point to assess all this packed silicon nonsense. Ano yung problema? It's hard to criticize the packed silica kung wala yung ganong klase understanding what it really means. Kasi nakasilaw yung infrastructure eh. Kalsada dito, kuryente dyan, facilities dyan, pabrika dyan, some jobs there. Totoo naman, may ganong klaseng gains, but yung challenge siguro sa atin, to explain to others din, hindi yan development. Just because may logistics hub tayo, just because may tinayong advanced assembly testing packaging, just because may renewable energy or water systems kiniig dyan, doesn't mean Philippine development if it's all about supporting those mga foreign firms na nandyan. So, as an example lang to, isang gusto natin subaybayan sa 2027 budget, ito yung infrastructure flagship projects ng government, concentrated sa CL, NCR at ST. Ito yung poverty incidence ng Pilipinas. So notably, the biggest concentration of infrastructure projects were in the least poor regions. Bakit? Because the infrastructure was never really for Filipinos. It was for sino nandito. That's where most special economic zones are. That's where most of the country's large firms are. So yung packed silica, Luzon Economic Corridor, i-intensify din din kasi maghigop ng resources ng government, ng economy to support investments in areas na hindi man actually relevant sa atin. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So, it's bad enough under the current foreign investment regime na wala tayong pakinabang. Again, Intel, case in point. Pero, it's even worse that the US wants even more. At lumabas na ito sa balita so many times, yung mga demands ng US. Basically, the US wants more because it's a national security concern for them. Since it's a national security concern, they want maximum operational control, they want maximum room to maneuver with minimum leakages or pakikialam or being affected by any shifts in the government or whatever. So sobrang push yung US to have greater control over yung gagawin nila, hindi lang sa Clark Green City, but wherever else sa Luzon Economic Corridor. Pero kung focus yung the packed silica, yun ang logic kung bakit gusto ng diplomatic immunity. Maximum room to maneuver. Of course, inulungan nila yan. Pero important yung point na to about yung US law. 3 major points lang about how pushy the US is. One, important to, yung paggamit na term na economic statecraft at the fact na US State Department, hindi Department of Commerce or some smaller department na nag-push ng packed silica, national security kasi talaga siya. So in terms of economic statecraft, gagamitin ng US all levers of foreign policy niya to get what it wants kasi nga national security concern. And that's asymmetric sa atin and that's going to be a point of concern. Pero second problem is yung 2 things na raise nila, joint governance at yung American expertise institutions, legal regimes. Delikado siya kasi one, yung joint governance, what does it mean? Una, we don't actually know what an economic security zone is. Is it the same kind of economic zone lang? Kung ganun, hindi lang ganun tinawag. Catch phrase somewhere, whatever maybe. Pero the term joint governance, that's dangerous kasi magkaka-government, two governments giving oversight over the economic security zone. So ibig sabihin may governing body with a US appointed official na hindi lang advisory, may binding decisions on investment decisions, sino pwedeng pumesto dyan, what infrastructure will be created, ano regulatory control over sa kanya, even yung planning expansion. So medyo weird na yon na may babatong term na joint governance. And of course, may sovereignty issue, ano yung powers na exercise jointly versus exclusive with the Philippine government. So hindi siya innocent na paggamit ng term, very loaded siya, but consistent from what the US wants, maximum control over the operations. Ito, we could go through them lang. Yung usapin ng institutions, legal regimes, you hear it all the time naman eh. Businesses want predictability. Businesses want consistency. Unfortunately, itong simple, parang nice-sounding expertise institutions and legal regimes. It's basically the US wanting a legal framework for locators na nakabias sa kanila. An examples nun, kung magkaroon ng issue sa mga contracts, di ba parang ano masama sa international enforceable or dispute resolution? Well, masama if any issue ay aangat nila automatically to international arbitration. Kasi bias yun against the Philippines at may bias for US in terms of yung resources niya to push cases but also yung laro niya sa international commercial law. So the law can be used against Filipinos at kung patulan yung whatever that might mean, delikado yon. Secondly, does it also mean na kailangan baguhin yung Philippine laws to give the US that leeway? So masama pero legal. Marami tayong experience ng masama pero legal, kaya napapatupad din siya. So I'll conclude with sa amin sa IBON, the most important reference point for the Pax Silica Framework Agreement na iluto sa November. Patuloy natin yung hype nila. This will industrialize the country. This will develop the Philippines. Sige, what does industrializing the Philippines mean? It means Philippine industrialization. It means Filipino firms producing high-tech goods with native ating science and technology. It means Filipino firms gamit ng local resources to produce. It means Filipino firms improving our productivity and our employment quality. So kung yun ang mga reference point natin sa industrialization, clearly, yung gagawin address or lunsaran lamang yung Clark Green City or Economic Corridor, as designed right now, they're not about developing Filipino industrialization, they're not about developing Filipino firms. Sobrang dami itong mga listahan na to, pero itong sa amin sa IBON, maging reference point namin for criticizing, foreseeing the problem with the framework agreement. Anong kailangan ng Philippines, paano tayo dapat makitungo to any foreign investor coming to the country if it's about Philippine industrialization. So hindi lang Pax Silica, actually any foreign investor nandito. Even yung mga sobrang daming manufacturing firms right now na foreign sa Pilipinas. Anong gusto natin? Super basic. The same way na may National Industrialization Plan ng US, dapat meron yung Pilipinas. To set priorities, to give guidance, to make sure na direksyon niyan supporting Filipino firms. Wala tayong ganyan. Kailangan ng ma-retain ng Philippines complete domestic legal regulatory authority. Kailangan mag-joint venture. The best way to learn is to be in the joint venture. The best way to regulate and control is to be in a joint venture. Kailangan may foreign investor dito. Okay, perform not just to you to make money, mandatory tech transfer, local procurement, local value added, domestic investment ng profits. Hindi lang yung kikita ka dito, then you do what you want. Of course, basic protection, labor rights, and welfare. Particularly important dun sa energy and water intensity ng planned na data centers and, well, assembly testing, not as bad as wafer fabrication, pero matako din siya. Kailangan strict environmental conditions. Tapos, pwede mas positive. Pinagmamalaki niyo yung Pax Silica will develop the country. Actually, what will develop the country is not advanced technology here na ang pakinabang goes to American firms or Japanese firms or European firms. Will Pax Silica Technologies help develop Filipino agri-machinery equipment? Will it help develop Filipino irrigation equipment, Filipino agroecology, Filipino renewable energy? Kung walang connection na yon, we're not getting that spillover na gusto natin. And of course, even so LEC infrastructure, if it's not helping Filipino agriculture, manufacturing, public transport, MSMEs, that's just for them, it's not for us. So, sa amin, pinaka-last point, sorry, super overtime na. Main point lang naman is ultimately, basura talaga. I mean, all those neoliberal globalization, free market-oriented policies, they were wrong before, they're even more untenable now. Amid changing global conditions, the protracted stagnations of the world economy, but especially itong growing protectionism by the big powers. There also, naming names, ang problema is with the BBM admin. I mean, what happens outside, discarded in US, China, Europe, discarded nila yan. But what happens sa atin inside our territory, a sovereign country, nasa kontrol naman ng Pilipinas, ng gobyerno. But if the BBM admin is kind of stuck in the past, sa economy, globalization, nonsense, liberalization, that's bad for us. If it aligns to the US, like a neo-colonial client state, that's bad for us. It's bad for us as our economy, and it's also bad for us as the Filipino people. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much.
Also with us are representatives from the Asian Development Bank, Embassy of France, and the Office of Senator Win Gatchalian. Thank you for being with us here with us today. So for our second speaker, she finished her AB Economics degree at the University of Philippines, Manila, and she's currently a member of the Board of Trustees for both IBON and the Asia Pacific Research Network. Let's give a warm welcome to IBON Research Head and Executive Editor, Rosario Guzman.
Okay, this is a relay. Magandang hapon, good afternoon. May echo? Wala. Okay. All right. This title does not exactly capture the essence of my presentation. But now that I have your attention with my artistic titling, which is telling of my age, if you know the song, my intention is to unravel, actually, the country's political economy and how vested interests consistently favor maintaining that insane development model that Sunny used all the nice adjectives, the what the F and all that. Why our political economy or vested interests are favoring that over economic transformation. So from the start, silence has been the politics or the political strategy of Bongbong Marcos. No? And this has been primarily intended for dodging responsibility. May momentary feigned outrage in his last SONA over the flood control scandals, over corruption within his own government. Pero what began as an expose of politicians plundering funds eventually revealed a much bigger scheme. How the national budget is diverted to corruption and pork barrel spending, and how the president himself signs it off. So we increased the tenor of public debate, and we talked about an even more systemic disease, bureaucrat capitalism. So, indeed, no, a year has passed, di natin mahanap si Saldico, and the former House Speaker, Martin Romualdez, both were named as the operators of the anomaly, have neither been arrested nor jailed. And how many of the more than 200 members of Congress who received funds for flood control projects have actually been charged? Ilan sa mga senador na napangalanan ang nakulong? Or even has anyone in the President's cabinet answered for this systemic corruption? Meron pang na-assign no? to head the only Islamic bank in the country, the former Budget Secretary, Amena Pangandaman. So, ganon, award-award lang. Walang pagsisisi, walang pagwawasto. And the President has not even asked to explain himself bakit niya pinirmahan yung ganong budget. Because Congress had swiftly dismissed impeachment complaint against Bongbong Marcos for being part of the whole anomaly. And then, parang walang nangyari. Bongbong signs a 2026 budget that is pork barrel ridden and elections ready. And mind you, in the next weeks, in August, we'll also sign the same character of a 2027 budget. So habang trinatry si Sara Duterte for impeachment, for among others, squandering her huge confidential and intelligence funds, the President is silent, as always, for keeping his 4.5 billion CIF himself. So ganon, no? Ganon yung politika. But in 2026, silence seems to be no longer enough of a strategy to dodge responsibility and to maintain the President's credibility. So, Bongbong Marcos' trust rating has dropped to a record low according to the latest SWS survey, which is widely attributed to growing public dissatisfaction over his handling of the economy at yung anti-corruption efforts. Oil price shock, economic decline, and successive blows to people's livelihoods. Tapos pinalala pa ito ng politika ng bansa na narating na niya yung kanyang all-time low. So the Marcos administration intensifies its politics of dodging into a blame game, blaming the global economic crisis for the local crisis. Pero yung blame game na yon, it only reveals how the Philippine state is designed to enrich foreign capitalists, local economic oligarchs, and elite bureaucrats. How the Philippine state is designed to perpetuate underdevelopment. So there are four main parts of our discussion today. What is the political economy of this crisis? Una, policymaking is not for us, the people. Policymaking is for foreign capitalists, for local economic oligarchs. Pangalawa, elite trapo conflicts are not about us. They're about power struggle. They're about power. It's not even about development strategies. They're not fighting over development strategies. Walang ganun. And then third, U.S. strategic priorities. Sani has already elaborated on this. But the U.S. strategic priorities shape Philippine economy and politics. And lastly, the Philippine state, the Philippine Republic, is founded on political repression. Okay. So let's begin with the first one. Policymaking is for foreign capital. So foreign capitalists and domestic economic oligarchs, they push the idea of economic liberalization to private and foreign capital and imports, as well as the privatization of public sectors. Sabi nila, the idea is, if you liberalize and if you privatize, this will usher development. Because this principle, they're pushing for that, because this principle favors their vested interests. So the Philippine government for decades has subscribed to that principle. And that principle has blocked the country's industrialization. The Philippine economy grew. Oh, nakita naman natin, no? For several years, the economy was growing. But it was driven by rentier sectors, not production. Real estate, construction, trade and finance. privatized utilities, mining and extractive industries, energy and foreign export manufacturing. They have all provided foreign capitalists and local oligarchs immense profit and wealth. So yun yung nag-grow. So when you see the GDP growth, you know where it is growing, and you know who is getting the wealth creation. The Marcos administration has strengthened. Going back to just the last, sorry, I'm not dazzling you. This is not BS. So, ano yung mga ginawa ng Marcos administration? So, una, inapprove niya yung more industries qualified for tax incentives, no, para sa mga malalaking korporasyon at saka mga lokal na korporasyon, no, under Create More. So, ang priority dito is given to artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, data centers, biotechnology, and other high-technology industries. Kasama rin yung renewable energy, electric vehicles, crude oil refining, and import substitute manufacturing. And then Marcos simplified and expedited the process and requirements for permits and licenses for so-called strategic investments. Ito yung tinatawag na Green Lane for strategic investments, which coincided with his announcement to the international community that the country is now open to 100% foreign ownership of renewable energy projects. And then Marcos extended foreign land lease to 99 years, virtually giving foreigners lifetime control. Sabi nga ng KMP, may forever. And then the National Land Use Act, no, otherwise known as NALUA, which was stalled under several administrations by the narrow interests of the landlord-dominated Congress, is now on its third reading in the House of Representatives. So apparently, yung pinag-aawayan nila or the political resistance before has been resolved na pwede naman palang magkaroon ng consensus that the new version is saying that land doesn't have to be regulated as a public resource. Yung kasi yung mga debate nun no? And now the new version is also saying that land use is largely subject to property interests, local patronage, and market profitability. Kulit mo Meanwhile, nagkaroon ng new mining fiscal regime. Ito lahat to under Marcos lang. Kanina may isang slide si Sanya, doon lahat yung laws no, di ba? So dito kasi natin makikita na yung what he was saying that parang yes, the world is changing, but you don't realize how fast and how harsh it has changed over time. So there is a new mining fiscal regime. So the Marcos government is actively promoting foreign investment in mining and mineral processing. At ang position niya is Philippine nickel, Philippine copper, cobalt, and other critical minerals as inputs for batteries, renewable energy, electric vehicles, etc. Ang ginawa lang niya is to continue the Duterte era reopening of mining. So if you remember, there was a moratorium on new mineral agreements under the Aquino administration, and that was lifted by Duterte, and Marcos continued it and finished off with a new fiscal regime and saying, oh no, we can get actually more taxes from opening up mining. Sabi natin, more taxes. These are patrimonial assets. You should get royalties, but no taxes lang. No? And I think it's just about 6% ng kukunin doon sa gross income ng mining companies. Marcos Jr. also approved yung public-private partnership amendment to the code to speed up the approval of solicited and unsolicited infrastructure projects. So ang ginawa niya, he increased incentives for big investments, liberalized restrictions to foreign ownership, pushed the PPP as the form of privatization, and provided sovereign guarantees to infrastructure and energy projects. Ano ba yung mga yan? Ibig sabihin, if we are in a partnership, public and private, and then something, kunyari, pinasabog yung factory mo, sagot ka ng gobyerno. So these are the guarantees, no, that government, the Philippine government provides private investors. Marcos Jr. also continues to uphold the privatization of essential public services and infrastructure. Kasama dyan yung water, electricity, energy, transportation, telecommunications, and of course, infrastructure. This includes turning over the management of Ninoy Aquino International Airport terminals to a private consortium led by Ramon Ang. This is a move that places a critical national gateway under corporate control and raises serious national security concerns. Okay. This picture is a protest, community protest in Dupax del Norte, Nueva Vizcaya against Waggle Mining Corporation. There are 201 infrastructure flagship projects under the Build Better More, BBM. Yan yung BBB dati, diba? Diba yung si Duterte, kala niya pag inulit-ulit niya yung salita, magkakatotoo, ganyan. Build, 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 jobs, 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 mga ganon. So, yung 201 projects, ang indicative amount niyan is 10.3 trillion pesos. More than half are for physical connectivity, roads, railways, airports, ports, and others. Kanina, pinakita sa atin, no, yung graph na nandito yung amount sa mga regions na to where poverty incidence is lowest, pero yung mga poorest, wala silang infrastructure. I think the point here is the top three oligarchs, namely Ramon Ang, Enrique Razon, and Manny Villar, have captured the big-ticket projects. Si Ramon Ang alone, through his SMC Infrastructure Corporation, has secured 9 major infrastructure projects in the last 5 years, 8 of which ay sa ilalim ni Marcos Jr., worth 1.3 trillion pesos, which is 13%, single-handedly, 13% of the total indicative amount of BBM. So, for this year, sabi ni Marcos, this year is delivery year. Delivery. Kasi ang tagal na eh. 2026 is delivery year, and by that, they have, in line with this, the government has allocated billions of funds para dun sa right-of-way funds, and even amended, implemented the Accelerated and Reformed Right-of-Way Act, yung ARROW Act, which gives the government additional power to evict and demolish communities that get in the way of high-impact projects. This picture, for instance, sa baba is Parola Tondo, where there was fire, because they had to be demolished to give way to the Southern Access Link Expressway of Ramon Ang. The oligarchs and foreign energy corporations, some of which do not even have a local counterpart, are also the winners of renewable energy projects. So they also win in the auction rounds of the Green Auction Program of the Department of Energy. They get long-term contracts and, of course, a guaranteed tariff. Ganon kasi yung JYAP, no? Tapos pababayaran sa inyo sa Meralco bill nyo yung JYA. Di ba? Uy, bayaran nyo, nagtatayo tayo ng renewable energy eh. The usual suspects in energy infrastructure, Lopez, Aboitiz, Ayala, and Consunji, they get a huge share of the awarded projects. So that's Mterra, Meralco. But notably, Ramon Ang and Enrique Razon have risen to capture renewable energy projects, with Razon even getting major stakes in the Lopez's First Gas Corporation. Yan siya. The combined wealth of the country's 5 richest billionaires increased by 54% from June 2022 to March 2026. Sino ba sa inyong nagkaroon ng increase sa income at sweldo na 54%? Kami nga wala eh. Enrique Razon, no, the port's magnate, reached a trillionaire status in 2026. This fortune was built on the privatization of strategic public infrastructure. Government policies transferred the operation of essential infrastructure and public services to private conglomerates, while guaranteeing long-term contracts, regulated territories, and dependable revenue streams. So the state transformed public ports and essential services into long-term sources of private monopoly profit. The Marcos administration further enriched Razon by granting and protecting long-term control over strategic public assets from Malampaya and Iloilo Port to bulk water and renewable energy, and by deepening the PPP and privatization framework on which his corporate empire thrives. Hindi siya sipag at tiyaga. Okay. Ganyan mga tayo dapat sali. Okay. The next part is the elite trap of conflicts are over power and not development strategies. Okay. I will spare you the sordid details of the Senate drama. The impeachment, nood na lang kayo ng altermedia, no, every day, of Sara Duterte. No? How, from the outset, the issue of accountability was buried beneath the factional feud between the Duterte camp and the Marcos liberals' Pinklawan bloc. I will spare you the details of Senator Bato's literal misstep to avoid a pending warrant of arrest from the ICC for aiding former President Rodrigo Duterte in committing crimes against humanity. Actually, Bato has gone into hiding at naubusan na raw siya ng mga disguise. Okay. Senator Jinggoy Estrada was charged with non-bailable plunder and graft, no, 573 million pesos from the anomalous flood control projects. He was arrested, detained, and suspended as a senator. Senator Marcoleta was charged with plunder, arrested and arraigned. Yung case niya, iba naman, yan yung 75 million allegedly received from private donors during his 2025 campaign. Both are Duterte allies. And Senator Marcoleta showed miracle the other day by being wheeled to PGH and coming out na naglalakad na siya. Naglakad siya. Okay. We will not go into details about how, for instance, in a matter of weeks, Senator Peter Cayetano has grown a beard. Or his sister Pia Cayetano, who recently joined the High Rocks event in Hong Kong, was breathless from just walking around the Senate. Or how Muslim Senator Robin Padilla has turned into a Christian communist. Gusto niyo pa ba ng mga ganon? Di na, no? Kasi, we have idiotic senators. This is an all-time low in Philippine politics. But undeniably, the Marcos camp has a hand in this spectacle, not to hold Sara Duterte accountable for betrayal of public trust, not even to bring justice to the families of victims of Duterte's drug war, but simply to weaken her before the 2028 elections. The Duterte camp, on the other hand, is selling all the drama to gain public sympathy for Sara Duterte to survive attacks and gain the presidency. So there is no genuine accountability that can be expected from all this, because the corruption scandal itself has been weaponized by the Marcos faction to consolidate its control over government officials. Bongbong Marcos exposed corruption not out of any sincere desire to end corruption, but to further weaken his rivals' hold on power. Some of the liberals, on the other hand, have been silent or reluctant to name Bongbong Marcos or hold him accountable for the systemic corruption. So, ganun yung politika natin. Because the reality is that our lawmakers and politicians, Makabayan bloc excluded, are not focusing on economic reforms to help people survive the raging economic crisis. They are not focusing on reversing economic liberalization, not on crafting a genuine development plan. They even have an overt alignment with the US agenda for the Philippines. So as said, except for the Makabayan bloc, no politician from any of the factions of the ruling elite has any interest in rejecting neoliberalism, in rejecting US intervention, and oligarchic vested interests and profiteering. So yun yung politika natin. Trapo bickering has only proven how little the people can expect from elite elections. Ang problema, yung iba sa atin, no? Hindi sa atin, sa kanila pala. May mga ano na sila, tambalan. Oh, hindi na ako magbabanggit ng pangalan. Sorry, hindi na kita na ano. So ganito itsura natin. We have, yung may rotten politics, they're not focusing on the issues. No? Like for example, the students are asking for genuine increase in the education budget, pero at hindi rin naman napapasagot, no, yung kumbaga corruption doon sa budget na yon mismo. So ang ironic, di ba? Because, you know, trapo bickering is just about that. It's just about power struggle. Okay. Yung pangatlo, yung strategic priorities. And here, I think Sunny has already mentioned, no, na we are being used as this. So yung US imperialism and intervention in the Philippine economy and politics with the Philippines as a neo-colony has been going on for the last 80 years. Pero let's focus on Marcos administration. But since 2022, the Marcos Jr. administration has embedded, no, the country in an increasingly dense and asymmetric network of US-led defense, industrial, technological, and supply chain arrangements. So since 2022, yung administration has entered into a series of bilateral agreements, policy commitments, investment initiatives, institutional mechanisms, security economic cooperation frameworks to align Philippine infrastructure, natural resources, industrial policy, technology systems, and regulatory priorities with US national security and industrial policy objectives. So the US is shaping the Philippines as a frontline military platform. Yung US facilities, nabanggit nga kanina, are intentionally spread nationwide with command centers, 9 EDCA sites, missile sites, ammunition storage, fuel depots, and other war material, plus dual-use infrastructure to enable US mobility, US military flexibility, mobility, at saka yung command and control, no? The US and Philippine Armed Forces have also increased yung scope, yung manera, yung methods ng kanilang military exercises, including the recent launching, no, of a Tomahawk missile from Tacloban Airport to Fort Magsaysay in Laur, Nueva Ecija, using the Typhoon missile system, which we know is a mobile land-based system designed to strike at distances, no? Strike targets at distances. So, may pagka-long range yung kaya ng Typhoons. So, yung deployment ng Typhoon system is in the Philippines turns Philippine territory into a forward missile platform in the US's military strategy against China. Yung ganun sana na nakaka-obvious yung nangyayari mismo sa land natin instead of, just some activists focusing on the WPS. The US is designing, yung Philippines naman, banggit na rin kanina, as a site for its defense industrial base, particularly for semicon and AI, in support of US's national security strategy. Yung national security strategy, hindi siya one after the other. National security mo na magkaka-econ security. Econ security mo na, hindi, talagang isa siyang parang siya, Siamese twins. Ganun na nila pinackage yun, no? And for US, the national security strategy, yung center nun is makuha niya yung leadership in technology. And which has the aim of containing, outpacing, and defeating China through a full range of national power, in the words of the NSS. Sabi na, anong national power? National power ni US, which means US plus allies, like the Philippines. So, ang core ng China and US rivalry is this. Each seeks technological dominance and power. Both regard this dominance as the foundation of economic security and national security. So yung competition nila centers on controlling and leading in semiconductors, AI, and the raw materials these technologies require, particularly critical minerals and rare earth elements. So the US has designated the Philippines to provide territory and infrastructure for the US to achieve its military and economic hegemony. Ito yung Luzon Economic Corridor. Ayan yung haba, And then PAC Silica are designed to provide minerals, both LAC and PAC Silica, yun yung design nila, to provide mineral resources, labor, semiconductor manufacturing, at maging bahagi ng US's strategic supply chain restructuring ng weapons and dual-use technologies. So I think yesterday, yung itong si Bingkang ba pangalan? Sorry, si BCDA CEO, So naglabas siya ng true and false, para sagutin yung mga reklamo nyo, na hindi totoo na PAC Silica is about mining. It's about mineral processing, di ba? So hindi rin, hanapin nyo na lang, meron kasi siyang infographic din, nakakatawa. Hindi totoo na ito ay panggera. It's about manufacturing. So, ganon, Isa kasi ang raw mat, ng weapons, tsaka nung AI. And AI, in fact, is used para sa gera. So, yung ganong parang tayong, sabi nga, infantilize. So, the Marcos Jr. administration actually, even before PAC Silica, has already committed the construction of Subic-Clark Manila-Batangas Railway. Nakaka-excite, di ba? Ang bilis ko lang madala sa railway. Subic-Clark, Batangas. Hindi kayo pasasakayin doon. And then, of course, yung North-South commuter, North-South! Sabi mo, Calamba to Clark. Actually, originally, Calamba to Clark International Airport. Amil, makakauwi na ako ng Palawan. Tapos, pagdating mo ng Clark, lalagyan pa niya yun ng extension that goes all the way to New Clark City. Ang ganda. And then, Marcos has also signed the Subic-Clark Fuel Pipeline. So ito yon, magpapass through ito, Subic Bay, Basa Air Base, Clark Airport, New Clark City. So hindi na kailangan isakay sa truck yung fuel, tapos aandar sa land. Tapos matatraffic doon sa SCTEX. Hindi na. Meron na sa ilalim na fuel pipeline. And the government has also committed to establishing a fuel storage facility in Subic Bay Freeport Zone. Of course, the most striking at the moment is the U.S. Economic Security Zone being built in New Clark City under the PAC's Silica Initiative. Golden Node, yun ang tawag sa kanya, which promises high-end manufacturing, as Sunny has already mentioned, and industrialization for the country. Pero increasingly, dahil ang ingay nyo, it's being unraveled as simply an expansion of the U.S. defense industrial base. So the Philippines will no longer be just a site of U.S. troops and weapons. It is also being developed to produce technologies that are vital components of modern weaponry. At ito yung development ng LEC at saka ng PAC Silica. Yan yung magfa-facilitate further ng expansion of the U.S. military presence in the region. So, which the U.S. calls Indo-Pacific as an imaginary region. U.S. investments, lastly, we are being made as an economically and politically subservient new colony. Parang ang redundant ng mga salitang yon. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang, U.S. investments are one-sided. Asymmetry, yun yung ginamit kaninang term ni Sunny, which means that you prioritize U.S. economic and military interests while you narrow the Philippines' political autonomy or policy autonomy. The Philippine government's policy choices are increasingly tied to or constrained by U.S. geopolitical priorities. So ganun siya. And I think this subservience has always been detrimental to national development. And we've said this before, the U.S. does not care about corruption in government. The U.S. does not care about elite trapo conflicts. It doesn't even care about buffoons in the Senate and Congress, and they have one in the White House. The U.S. does not care about greedy or ambitious politicians. As long as pag nakaupo na yung mga yan, they will continue the policy making that is subservient to U.S. interests. Philippine state is founded on political repression. Siyempre, dahil Birdtalk to, lagay ko political repression, but it's actually founded on fascism, no? So, ganun na yung mga acceptable terms. Joke lang, It's really political repression. And if everything else fails, yung 80 years of the Philippine state's allegiance to the U.S. has been founded on political repression from day one of those 80 years. In fact, even from colonialism. Diba? Before even fascism was invented by Dimitrov, what was used against us ay isang brutal war that killed thousands and thousands of people, Filipinos. Ganon. Ngayon, yung neoliberalism is fascism in disguise. And in times of deepest crisis like what we are going through right now, it rears its ugly head. So yung growing social dissatisfaction and unrest have increased mass mobilizations, no? Iba-iba. Yung Pinoy talaga, no? Magkaroon ka lang ng isang talagang gigil na issue, lahat ng sektor meron na. Diba? O seniors kontra Korakot, Ma'am Judy. At hindi lang Maynila, iba-iba pang rehiyon. So, we have that kind of vibrant social movement. And these create opportunities to expand democratic accountability beyond elite factional conflicts. But these are met with systematic repression. And for sure, no, yung coercive governance will intensify habang nagkakagulo yung elite, as the elite insecurity grows. So sa atin talaga ang baling yan. Kasi kayo masyado kayong ano. Okay. So anyway. Lawfare. Lawfare ba ito? Paggamit ng batas, no? Bilang isang weapon. So the Marcos Jr. government is implementing the National Action Plan for Unity, Peace, and Development simply to eliminate armed conflict, but without openness to peace talks with insurgents to address the roots of armed conflict. Ang galing, di ba? The Marcos Jr. government is using the U.S. counterinsurgency guide in its own counterinsurgency campaign. Ito yung the whole of nation approach, which is in the NTF-LCAC, embodied in the NTF-LCAC operations, which means integrating civil agencies in counterinsurgency. Then there are 3 terror bills, no, that are in the works under Bongbong Marcos's watch. Yung isa is the Anti-Disinformation Bill na crafted none other than nung kanyang anak, si Sandro, which centralizes in the state the determination of which is fake and real information. So yung Estado na lang makapagsabi kung ano ang fake at hindi na information. And the state may impose heavy penalties, including imprisonment, for those found to be spreading disinformation according to the state's definition. The other terror bill is the Foreign Information and Manipulation and Interference Bill, which seeks to identify and counter covert, coordinated, or deceptive efforts by foreign actors to manipulate public opinion, public debate, political debate, or democratic processes. Now, this may be an act against foreign-funded partnerships. Kasi yung foreign interference is vague in the proposed bill. So, hindi naman masyadong natatakot ang IBON doon, no? So, wala tayong foreign fund. So, nakukuha nyo kung saan, ano yung kinoconstrict, no? So yung mga organizations that rely on development aid, etc., you may be, accused of being being deceived or coordinated by foreign actors to manipulate di lalo na yung mga NGOs na nasa advocacy. The third bill is a proposal from Senator Bato. Huwag kayong tumawa, baka umapir yan para lang maipasa yung bill. No? This is the terror grooming bill, which seeks to criminalize yung indoctrination daw and conditioning of people na yung kanyang bill ay humaba na yung description ng sino ba tong mga vulnerable people. Hanggang dati nagsimulang 4 na sektor lang yan. Ngayon lahat na ng 19 sectors na pangalanan. So tayo yun. Di ba? Nag-organisa tayo ng mga sektor. Kinokondisyon natin sila. Pero dito sinasabi toward terrorism, violent extremism, etc. So, this includes methods such as psychological, di ba? Prop, emotional, ideological, idi-idi dyan. Religious, yung mga basic Christian community nyo. Cultural, cultural, syempre, nood kayo ng di ba? Tiempo muerto. And academic methods. Teacher, ma'am, ang penalty mo ay 15 to 40 years imprisonment ng walang parole. At ang fine mo can reach up to 10 million pesos. Because you are terror grooming your students. So, okay, last na. This is the last slide. Okay lang. Marcos Jr. ambitiously sought a non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council. Diba? So nung inaabangan natin, parang tayo nakaabang sa Miss U. Sabi, nanalo? Hindi, Kyrgyzstan. Ganon, diba? So the Philippines lost to Kyrgyzstan, which only exposes the limits of Marcos Jr.'s US-dependent foreign policy and the country's diminished diplomatic credibility among the global South. And it also exposes the international notoriety of Marcos's human rights record. So, wala siyang credibility sa usapin ng human rights. Okay, I think the data and the photos will speak for themselves. Democratic power, undeniably, no, rests in the people. Doon sa apat nating ipinakitang features of the political economy of the Philippine crisis. So definitely, undeniably, walang kumbaga pagdududa sa atin na yung democratic power rests in the people. So now we need politics, a politics of demanding accountability. We need a politics of militantly confronting the social ills, confronting imperialism, confronting bureaucrat capitalism, confronting feudalism. We need politics that rejects self-serving politicians. Wala tayong masyadong bumeso-beso. Wala nang time. And we need politics that is struggling for people's democratic rights and welfare, and fighting for a progressive economy and national sovereignty. We can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseby, for your input. And of course, we're looking forward to talking more with our two speakers later during the discussion in open forum. But before that, one reminding regarding the open forum, if you could prepare your questions beforehand, and as much as possible, keep it to one question or straight to the point, to ensure that everybody in the audience that wants to present their thoughts or ask questions will have the opportunity to do so, especially since I believe our time for the open forum is limited today. So please prepare your questions and thoughts to share later. So to also share their insights and reactions regarding the Hello, okay. Anyways, I'll be a distance, so maybe you can hear me from here. To present their reactions and thoughts regarding the and then maybe we can use this mic later. We can our next two reactors actually are among our partners for this event. Our first reactor will be Loren C., former Students' Right and Welfare Counselor of the School of Economics, former economics representative to the USC, and current counselor of the University Student Council. Our second reactor is Francesca Cue, who is a full-time faculty member at UP Diliman and current National Vice President for Faculty at the All-UP Academic Employees Union. So let's give them a round of applause and have them come up here to share their reactions. Thank you.
Hello. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Bilang kinatawan po ng School of Economics Student Council at ng University Student Council, nais po naming pasalamatan yung IBON Foundation at yung mga speakers para sa napakalagang diskusyon ngayong hapon. So malinaw naman po na pinakita ng mga presentasyon yung kinakaharap nating krisis ay hindi basta-basta biglang lumitaw dahil sa mga recent na nangyaring pandaigdigan na pangyayari o kasalukuyang tensions. Malinaw na ito ay nagpalala lamang sa isang krisis na matagal nang umiiral. This crisis is long-rooted in the structure of imperialism and neoliberal globalization that has long kept the Philippines and countries like the Philippines dependent on foreign capital and interests. Nabanggit nga ni Sir Sonny, national security has become part of economic security. We cannot separate economic domination from military and political domination. For example, sa Pax Silica, hindi lang ito simpleng usapin ng industriya ng AI hubs or semiconductors dahil ito rin ay tunggalian ng mga malalaking imperialistang bansa para kontrolin yung produksyon at ng mga merkado ng daigdig. At hindi lamang nadadamay yung Pilipinas sa tunggaliang ito, ang sarili nating gobyerno ang mismong nagpapakatuta sa mga dayuhan dahil imbis na paunlarin ang ating sariling industriya at bumuo ng isang ekonomiyang nakabatay sa ating pangangailangan, isinusuko nito ang ating likas na yaman, lakas paggawa, at maging ang ating teritoryo kapalit ng dayuhang interes. Pinipili nitong panatilihin ang isang bansang nakaasa at sunod-sunuran sa dikta ng imperialismo. At sa ganitong kalagayan, mahalagang balikan ang papel ng economics bilang isang disiplina. Economics should never be reduced to mathematical models or market inefficiencies that assume that these existing institutions are neutral. Under imperialism, yung mga frameworks na ito normalize privatization, liberalization, and deregulation as if they are unquestionable truths, while dismissing alternatives as ideological. At marahil may irony din na nagaganap itong talakayang ito mismo dito sa School of Economics dahil historically, this institution has produced many of the country's economists who occupy positions of power in government and policymaking. Yet, many of these people continue to reject and quickly dismiss the progressive calls of the masses, treating them as ideological rather than engaging with the material realities faced by ordinary Filipinos. Hindi lang naman nakukulong sa institusyon ang pag-aaral ng ekonomiya. We learn economics in workers' picket lines, in farming communities defending their lands, and in urban poor communities resisting displacement. At doon natin mas malinaw na maaaral ang tunay na kalagayan ng ating ekonomiya. Hindi natin tunay na makakamit ang pambansang kaunlaran habang nananatiling bulok ang sistema. Walang tunay na pag-unlad habang umiiral ang pasismo ng Estado na nagpapatahimik sa mamamayang lumalaban para sa kabuhayan, habang kinukulong yung mga mamamahayag tulad ni Frenchie May Cumpio at pinapaslang ang mga kabataan tulad ni Alisa Alano at Maureen Santuyo. Ang karahasang ito ay bahagi ng sistemang nagpapanatili ng pansasamantala. At malinaw, wala tayong maaasahan sa isang estadong patuloy na nag-iinteres sa interes ng iilan at ng dayuhang kapangyarihan. Ang tunay na pagbabago ay hindi lamang manggagaling sa itaas, makakamit ito sa sama-samang pagkilos ng mamamayan. Bilang panawagan nga namin sa konseho, ay isulong ang isang makamasang ekonomiya. Isang ekonomiyang hindi nagsisilbi sa interes ng iilan, kundi tumutugon sa pangangailangan ng sambayanan. Maraming salamat po.
Tulad po ng University Student Council, nagpapasalamat. Nakikita nyo, nagpabako. Nagpapasalamat po ang Akademikong Union ng UP sa ating mga speakers at sa IBON. Kasi reactor kami, no? So magbibigay tayo ng ating reaction doon sa dire at napaka-negatibo, no? Na ulat at datos ng IBON. Ang itsura nito naman, siguro magpapakatotoo tayo sa ano ang itsura nitong mga datos na ito sa ating pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay. No? Tulad ng napakarami sa ating mga mamamayan, syempre nararamdaman natin yung taas ng bilihin. Hindi ko po alam kung magkano na yung singil sa inyo sa kuryente, pero syempre napakabigat, no, para sa normal na mamamayan. Bukod pa dito, nararamdaman natin yung hindi tumataas ang sahod. No? Every month binibill ka ng Meralco, ang taas ng presyo ng pagkain, ang taas ng presyo ng transportasyon, pero hindi naman nakakaagapay ang sahod. At lalo pa nga nagiging mas contractual pa ang mga manggagawa. Nabanggit din kanina, kasabay nito yung pag-defund sa serbisyo publiko tulad sa sektor ng edukasyon na kung saan kabilang ang All-UP Academic Employees Union. Pinaglalaban natin na sana 50K ang Teacher 1 at itaas sa 36K ang SG1 dahil below minimum wage pa rin. No? Para lang sa kaalaman ninyo sa kalagayan po sa UP, kung saan sa tingin natin, wow, pag nakapasok ka sa UP, ano ka na? okay ka na kasi meron ka ng secure job, GSIS, ganyan. Pero 1 out of 4 na manggagawa at empleyado ng UP ay contractual. At lumalaki pa yung bilang na yan. Tapos ang 48%, halos kalahati ng plantilla items ay salary grade 1 to 10. Hindi yan pasok doon sa 1,200 family living wage or living wage. No? 77% ng staff, yung tawag natin mga kawani, yung staff at yung reps, research extension professional staff ng UP, ay hindi abot din sa 1,200 family living wage. No? So yan yung realidad natin sa universidad. Tapos meron pang reforma sa edukasyon na neoliberal ang karakter. Yan yung pagbago ng yung reframed GE curriculum, pagbago ng senior high school curriculum para gawing pang-export at ilabas ang ating mga estudyante, no? Para maging slave kayo doon sa pag-globalize at pati ang ating mga mamamayan ay nilalabas sa bansa. Imbis na manatili dito para mag-contribute sa ating ekonomiya at patatagin pa ang ating bansa. No? Tapos yung sinabi ni Ma'am Rosby na bumababa taon-taon ang budget sa edukasyon. Dito naman sa mga SUCs natin, kabilang ng UP, dahil bumababa ang budget sa edukasyon, yung UP at mga SUCs ngayon ay resorting to commercialization. So ikwento ko lang, chika ko rin din yung nangyayari dito sa ating bahagi ng Diliman. No? Kasi yung UP, parang sabi niya, ay kailangan natin ng project, so bumuo tayo ng SDG Park, Sustainable Development Goals Park. Diyan sa may Pook Aguinaldo, Pook Malantik, na historically ay sakahan. No? A farming community siya. At diyan din nakatira ang marami sa ating mga miyembro ng komunidad at maraming empleyado, kawani at manggagawa. No? So sabi ng UP, SDG Park, para makaayon siya sa pag-uplift at pagtaguyod ng Sustainable Development Goals. So ang tanong, papaano na ang isang commercialized na proyekto na magpapapasok ng mga yung PPP siya di ba? Papapasukin niya yung mga private investors. Paano niyan ma-uplift ang SDG na iibsan niya ang kagutuman? Di ba? Magpo-provide siya ng maayos na pamumuhay. So, bahala na lang kayo, tulad sa national government, bahala na lang kayo kung paano nyo isirko-sirko yung logic para ma-justify yung ganitong oo, matataguyod niya ng pagtaas ng yung pag-achieve ng SDG. Tapos in the end, para kang tanga pag dinedefend mo yung... So, pero yung mga UP, ayaw daw magpakatanga. Parang ayaw magpakatanga. So, i-rename natin, gawin natin SDG, Southern Diliman Gardens. So, ganyan na, no? So, mga ganitong pakana ng komersyalisasyon dahil sa pagliit ng pondo sa edukasyon. Isa pa ay pagkawasak ng kalikasan, no? Pang-aapi sa magsasaka, sa mga katutubo at maralita. Binanggit po yung Paxilica. Siyempre, alam natin ang AI data centers ay napakalaki ng kinoconsume na energy at Tapos, siyempre, doon sa mga rehiyon kung saan dito tina-target, di ba, yung buong Pilipinas na nga ay gagawing base, no? Siyempre, nag-increase ang militarization para to prepare the ground for the US. Tapos, pagpasok ng malalaking kumpanya, na gusto makihati sa green energy, kino-convert yung agricultural land, ginagawang wind farm, solar farms, wind turbine farms, at mixed use sa buong Pilipinas. So makikita nyo po sa Negros, for example, at sa Central Luzon, kung saan napakahirap ng mga mamamayan dyan nagtatayo ng mga ganitong mga private na pagkakakitaan. So, at tinahinang kanina na ang tanong kasi, bakit nagpupush ng decrepit na growth model pa rin ng Pilipinas after 50 years of failure, di ba? Deregularization, neoliberalization, privatization. Dahil, bakit daw stuck in the past? Dahil nga, sinabi din ni Renz kanina, dahil hindi naman tayo alay, para tayong tuta. Actually, pero you're nicer to your puppy than the US is nicer. It's nice to the Philippines. Kasi at least yung puppy mo, yung interest niya, yung gusto mo. Pero ito, mas slave ka pa. Naku, pinaano na ako. So, ang reaction natin ay matinding alarma, malalim na disgusto, at matinding galit. Yun ang dapat na reaction nating lahat. So, ngayon po, siguro call to action na lang para ma-prepare kayo sa ating mobilisasyon sa SONA, ano ang ating mga panawagan. So, ang una, syempre, ay paksilika tutulan. Diba? Huwag pahintulutan, nakapailalim dyan yung lupang ninuno, depensan kung nagalit kayo dun sa kay Cara David, yung special dun sa landfill sa Subic, mas monstrous pa ang paksilika. At actually yung mga katutubo na pinaalis sa kanilang lupang ninuno, alam na nila. Yung parang, oh shit, ito na naman. Ito na naman, sabi nila trabaho. Pero natuto sila sa New Clark City, na yung trabaho ay precarious, barat na barat yung sahod, hindi naman tumagal. Tapos nawala pa sa kanila yung kanilang mga sakahan at yung kabuhayan nila. So alam na nila yan. So tayo lalo pa, gumawa tayo ng mga TikTok at magmobilisa tayo din sa napaka-monstrous na paksilika na ito. Siyempre, nandin yan ang isulong ang pambansang industrialisasyon, budget sa edukasyon, dagdagan, huwag bawasan, lahat ng sangkot dapat managot. Siyempre, sahod itaas, presyo ibaba. Last na lang po, kailangan ko talagang i-plug po para sa sa education sector, yung personal economic relief allowance ay ang panawagan po namin ay gawing 5K mula 2,000. Tapos yung mid-year bonus para sa aming mga JOCOS at yung syempre kasi walang support yung UP at yung gobyerno sa naghihikaos na mga empleyado, no, yung economic relief grant na parang di-reject na kami, ganyan. Tapos syempre contractualisasyon wakasan, manggagawang kontraktor gawing regular. Tapos syempre yan yung hanayan natin, yung bureaukrata kapitalismo ibagsak at syempre yung pinakataas yan, yung final boss, imperialismo ibagsak. Yun lamang po, maraming salamat.
Thank you to our reactors, Lorenzi at Ma'am Kit Quay. Thank you very much. For our next part of the program, she is a member of the Union ng mga Manggagawa sa Agrikultura or UMA. Let's give a warm welcome to Manggagawang Pangkultura, si Mara Peralta.
Sa mga awit ni kasamang Erickson Acosta para sa mga manggagawa at nagsasaka.
Hello. Okay, thank you. Sige pa. So a few more announcements. Currently, despite APERA's promise of lower power costs through competition, the Philippines has the second highest electricity rates in Southeast Asia. The power sector is dominated by a few oligarchs, and the country continues to rely heavily on imported fossil fuels. Meanwhile, the rush for renewable energy has largely meant big local and foreign-backed projects displacing farmers and encroaching on farms, forests, mountains, and mangroves. Amid this energy situation, we would like to introduce Renew PH Now, Renewables for the People, an IBON Consumers International collaboration that empowers Filipinos to engage in the country's energy transition. This platform explains the Philippines' energy mix, renewable energy potential, barriers to democratic access, and people-centered solutions that put public control, environment protection, and communities before corporate profit. Visit Renew PH Now at the ibon.org website under Renew PH Now and follow Renewables for the People on Facebook. Join us in advancing a people-centered renewable energy future and the campaign for a nationalized energy sector. Thank you. So we hope you can visit this site. Next, Kwentong May Kwenta, or KMK, is a podcast by the Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas, KMP, and IBON Foundation, hosted by Rafael Capaeng Mariano and Rosario Guzman. Now on its second season, KMK features an in-depth discussion on various issues affecting Philippine agriculture. The latest episode is a conversation on tax silica. You can listen to KMK on YouTube, Spotify, and other platforms through our RSS. Give us a follow on our socials at kmk.card.co. And last but not least, don't forget to visit the official IBON website, www.ibon.org, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also scan the QR code. Thank you very much. Sige, so that's all muna for announcements right now. So ngayon, I'm gonna ask our two speakers, Rose B and Sunny, to join us on the stage for our initial discussion, and then eventually mag-open forum tayo. Hi, Rose B. Why, you're so far away. Where's Sunny? Okay, in the middle. Sige, hi, how are you? So this is your chance, a quick discussion, because we want to have more time for our open forum. But I guess just to open up, like, in both of your presentations, you mentioned U.S. initiatives, whether economic and defense-related, in the Philippines, and particularly regarding the Luzon Economic Corridor and tax silica. But what I wanted to know, or what's interesting to see, is you have U.S. foreign investments, but Roseby also raised earlier about oligarchs, local oligarchs here in the Philippines. In what way do you think, or do you sense that a local big business will benefit from these U.S. initiatives or interventions here in the Philippines, or do you see something else at play? We only have one microphone.
Ang hirap nung tanong mo. Sabi mo yung ano, hindi, joke lang. Mga planted questions, eh, no? Okay, we've already mentioned ano yung mga sectors nila, no? So actually, papasukin naman lahat nila more importantly ay walang investment na malakihan. There's no long waiting para sa return on investment. Ganun naman yung mga compradors, eh, no? Yung oligarchs ay talagang comprador landlord based lang on natural resources, on ownership of public utilities. They're not investing in manufacturing. Okay, so having said that, kung ang pinapangako ng tax silica is manufacturing of semiconductors and microchips, maybe you've already heard how about more than 20 American and even yung mga taga-Dubai na mga corporations coming in and tinitingnan na nila yung itsura and expressing intention to invest. Like Foxconn, for example, the main manufacturer of iPhone and other gadgets, ay nagpunta na, di ba? So, ang comprador, makakapasok pa rin yan pagdating dun sa service niya and after-sales service. But let me just mention, kaya pinasa sa akin ni Sunny yung, yung mic, is that they're in renewable energy. And Pac Silica in China, for example, ay kaya niyang mag-produce, kaya niyang umungos sa AI and semicon just using renewable energy. By 2030, it's going to be 100%. All its factories will be run by renewable energy. So our oligarchs now are into that, kumbaga yun yung pinapasok nila. And I think that's where they will benefit. Sila rin yung magpo-provide, no? So, isa yan, no? Then yung iba, pwede pa nating abangan in terms of infrastructure. But let me also mention na yung corridor at yung mga pinangarap natin kaninang mga railway, ganyan. And even yung mga energy, even let's say they are offshore wind and all that, they will need the ports. Okay, so just do the math.
Just to clinch and support what si Rosby said. Obviously, there won't be any Filipino semiconductor firms. Obviously, there won't be any Filipino data center firms as well. Probably the biggest gain for domestic big business are where they have been profiting for the past decades. Utilities, especially energy, any possible water infrastructure, in all likelihood, other supporting infrastructure then, perhaps roads, transport, maybe some property development. But, I think that's important to stress kasi there will be foreign firms coming in, that's definite. But there will also be some domestic firms, especially big domestic firms, also benefiting. And there will be profits, and there will be jobs. But sa amin, the lens we should apply is that Philippine development. And that's where a lot of analysis goes wrong. Just because something is profitable, just because some jobs are being created, just because some economic activity is happening, from a development lens, that's not necessarily development. Because we've had so much real estate profits and development, we've had so much utilities development, we've had so much construction-related transport development, but the Philippine economy hasn't developed in the sense of having Filipino industry and stronger agriculture. So I think that's an important distinction to make kasi they will play up all the gains from Pac Silica, but again, the earlier presentation was to be clear what counts as development and all that supporting infrastructure that's enabling lamang the supply chain that the U.S. wants for its own strategic self-interest.
Okay, thank you, Senator Rosby. So as we see that efforts are revving up in terms of projects, whether infra, whether Pac Silica, we touched upon how the Luzon Economic Corridor and Pac Silica will be a drain on resources, whether energy or water. But what do we see as the impact also to agriculture? Because it's interesting that it seems that lots of this is centered around Central Luzon, which is our rice granaries. So what impact do we see in that sense?
When we were having the discussion, sabi ni Sunny, wala nang aagawin na lupa dyan. Matagal nang naagaw yan. Okay. But interestingly, habang nagde-develop yung yung pagpirma November Framework Agreement, ang nirarush din nila ngayon is the amendment to the BCDA. So apparently the BCDA, reverted baselands yan, they can come up now with a law to revert that land to alienable and disposable land. And in our land laws, Pag in-A&D mo yan, it's automatic, it becomes an agricultural land. And it becomes an agricultural land, you can now turn it into another land use. So, ibig sabihin, the land has always been there. Kung kaya ng gobyernong magpasa ng batas na ibalik siya into an agricultural land use, ibig sabihin, may lupa pang babalikan yung mga ita at yung mga magsasaka. Okay, so that is, kumbaga yun na yung kung paano talaga tayo inagawan, no, ng lupa. But let me also, you started the question with resources. Yung mga nakapaligid, yes, the rice granary is not just the New Clark City. It's the whole of Central Luzon na super na-convert na rin, no, yung maraming prime agricultural lands. Let's just say, ito lang naman, sabi ng BCDA. Pero yung mga nakapalibot na mga sakahan will now be drained of resources, specifically water, for pack silica. So, yun kasi yung, yun yung kaya kanina tinitingnan namin yung infographics ni BCDA. Tinatanga tayo eh. Tinatanga. Kanina infantilize pa yung term ko. Pero ngayon, mumukha tayong tanga. Diba? Kasi sabi niya, hindi, may sapat. But when you look at government statistics or government records, sabi ko kay Sanin, tinignan mo na ba? Sabi niya, luma eh. But there are two kinds of sources of water. Gawin mo ng tatlo. Groundwater, maghuhukay ka, di ba? Surface water, tas ulan. Anong meron tayo ngayon? El Nino, okay. Ulan, X. Surface water, ano ba ang pinagdaanan ng Central Luzon? Di ba kung ano-ano mga dams at kung ano-anong mga multipurpose, etc. na wala naman pakinabang yung magsasaka. Okay, groundwater na lang. Wala talaga tayong stats noon. So the nerve of the government to say we have enough water for the data centers. They don't even have the statistics. Yun. Nakakapagod. Para akong si Mara kanina eh. Ano pa ako nung umpisa eh.
Hello.
Hello. Kaya si Linya. Okay, sige. Last question.
Okay. So sa tingin niyo, anong sasabihin ni BBM sa SONA?
Okay, sabi mo yung nagtanong eh. Siya na yun. Go. 10 minutes lang daw.
Do you guys care kung sabihin ni BBM sa SONA? I don't know, well, where he's coming from, of course, the low popularity matters. The positioning for 2028 matters. Getting public support for the impeachment and the selective anti-corruption drive matters. So, in all likelihood, for the things nearest and dearest to IBON, telling the truth about the state of the economy, telling the truth about how economic indicators are worsening, are going the wrong direction for most Filipinos, and of course admitting that there actually has been no government response in the face of the oil energy shock. We probably can say a little bit about that. He probably will, we hope talaga, say something about upper middle income as the last propaganda thread he can hang on to say na something was positive. Pero sasabog sa mukha na yan. Pero I think he will probably try to find some way to salvage yung Mahiya na Makiyo campaign. Kasi he saw the power of that campaign to mobilize people. He saw the power of that campaign to be used against yung enemies niya. He'll probably play up the few dozen cases against low-ranking bureaucrats. He'll probably play up a couple of senators iniipit. But sa akin, that's not really the most important. That actually, when Ross was talking nga, na-realize ko, okay, to be fair, no, super consequential impeachment. Super consequential yung national elections natin. Pero parang after hearing Ross B, parang in the grand scheme of things, ang petty ng squabbling nila eh. So, yeah, I'll have to listen, pay attention din naman. But last, ako magtatanong sa inyo, may nalalaba ba kayo dun sa last SONA niya apart from mahiya naman kayo? Ako ay doubt eh. So, I think this too shall pass, but I think it's a moment for us not to sort of look for something to criticize kay Bongbong. It's a moment when people are caring about the state of the nation, having forums like this, kausap yung mga kaopisina, katrabaho, kausap ang kapamilya, have more forums like this. I think sa akin mas important what's happening outside the SONA with the mobilizations, with the forums. Para naman yung, para we can control the narrative directed toward what really matters the most. That's me. Uminan kasi ako.
Ako, parang isip ko, ay baka ipagmalaki. Kasi maraming obscure stats, yung sinasabi ni Sunny. Naalala niyo pa ba, bukod dun sa mahiya naman kayo? Marami, yung mga maliliit, yung mga ilang health centers, yung nalagyan na ng paracetamol, yung mga ganon, di ba? Oo! Alam mo, meron kaming researcher, wala siyang ginawa kundi tinuro. Ililista mo yun eh, kasi hahanapin mo rin yung truthfulness noon. So, naisip ko, baka magbigay din siya ng mga, yung digital infrastructure, pwede niya ipagmalaki yun. Na wala naman sa ating nakaramdam o di ba? Naka-witness or walang malay, pero pag mag-aan ba siya, mag-name, mag-ano ng mga terms. Digital infrastructure, naitayo na natin yan at nararating na ang mga 100,000 na kabahayan, whatever. So, ganon. Pero habang iniisip ko yun, hindi eh. Bumagsak po ang dayuhang pamumuhunan sa huling datos ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So, saan kaya siya huhugot, di ba, ng mga pantasya niya? Yun lang.
Okay, thank you. Sige. So ngayon, we're going to open the questions, forums, comments to our audience here with us today. So just a few reminders. Kung meron po kayong tanong, you have two options. Pwedeng, diba sa program nyo, you can write down your question there, tapos stare it off. At pwede i-pass one of our IBON staff that are here on the side, si Isa at si Anton. Si Anton, they can retrieve the paper from you with your question, or you can come up to the mics that they are holding. And please, if you should choose to come up to the mic, please introduce yourself, say your name, your organization or office or school that you're from. And then again, reminder, please keep your question short and straight to the point so that we can accommodate the questions of other audience members, or we can accommodate as many questions as possible. Tapos also reminder to our speakers to also be short and straight to the point. Also in your answers. Okay, sige po. So, whoever would like to start, you can come to the mics or the roving mics around the ground, or if there's a written. So, we're unfortunately at today's forum we only have enough time for just 3 questions, apparently. So, first come, first serve. Okay, so we have a mic set up right now, and here we go. Sir, if you could please state your name and your...
No.
Yes.
Yes, I'm formerly the Dean of the UP Business School.
Welcome,
and
sir.
I'd like to ask our 2 speakers about their projections, about the impact on our economic situation of the forthcoming elections. We know typically money will flow into the pockets of politicians going to electorates, in the case of handouts. Would that be a booster to our economy, or it would be disaster as usual. And probably I'll extend it much further. I'm always thinking, who in his or her right mind would like to run for president when by July 2028, when he or she comes in, Philippines will be bankrupt. So that's my question.
Thank you po. Sige.
The most straightforward way to look at the economic impact of elections is dun sa nabanggit ni Sir about the election spending. We've tracked midterm and national elections since 1986. Basically, there's usually a little bit of a bump in the 6 months leading up to the elections. Pero also, there's usually a bit of a dip in the next 2 quarters after the election. So I think there is a momentary bump, generally speaking. Some are quite big, a few percentage points, some quite small. But basically, they even out there. So I think on the growth aspect, it will always boost the figures more than not, but not substantially, only temporarily. And I think particularly right now, there will probably be bigger forces at play. Super El Nino right now, we actually don't know if there are going to be any more geopolitical shocks in the coming 2 years. My feeling is that, in principle, it will bump up growth, but in all likelihood, there's going to be something bigger in play. So even that bumping growth, my fearless forecast, it won't actually be felt. It will be on the low end compared to the past election periods. But one, I think, consequential impact of the elections will be the pork barrel. And I think that's most alarming because the 2027 budget in particular is the election budget. And clearly, Makabayan, for instance, made estimates of 700 billion pesos in pork barrel in the 2026 budget. Because there's such tightening of the political race for 2028, in all likelihood, that's going to be larger for the 2027 budget. So every peso diverted is a peso misallocated. Every peso stolen is a peso lost for social services. I think that's going to be a more consequential economic impact of the 2028 elections. The maneuvering among politicians, especially by the incumbent, because that's the last and ultimate weapon he has to try and influence the outcome of the 2028 elections. Pero a third, maybe not so consequential impact, I think will be where the businessmen, Philippine big business, kung saan sila tataya, who they will be supporting. That, I think, is not going to be consequential because, unfortunately, there's a stunning consistency with the relationship of Philippine big business with whoever is in power. There's a stunning consistency na, yeah, maybe some will get a bump up compared to others. But again, there's so few opportunities for profit in the Philippines, it all evens out there. So I think that's going to be not consequential in economic terms, but maybe between who politician is close to who oligarch, maybe there might be some reallocation heading into 2028. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, we did the number crunching. It's actually relatively minor and it actually evens out then in the 6 months after.
Thank you. Must be.
Who is in his right, her right mind? You can answer that. Actually, yung pong Marcos administration has been running on deficit, no, for the whole duration, no, of the term. And if you remember noon si Estrada, nung pagpasok niya, hindi ko makalimutan sa Inquirer, yung headline niya is, "We are bankrupt." So ibig sabihin, yung ruling elite, aware siya na yung national coffers ay na-drain talaga doon sa kanyang unproductive spending, sa kanyang corruption, etc., etc. So, yun yung Yun yung laging tatakbo siya, then alam niyang bankrupt yung government, will take over it, but also will gain from it using other means. No? Ako tingin ko magkaka-impact din siya sa borrowing. Yung as we approach election time, or even after that, na meron ng bagong presidente taking over a bankrupt government, and also an economic crisis, no, na sabi nga natin it's going to get worse, no, it's going to get worse, ay papasok talaga siya dun sa pangungutang with all the impositions, no, to save the economy, to implement additional taxes on the people, on the poor and the middle class, etc. Kumbaga parang pag tinitingnan natin yung elections na magbibigay siya ng temporary boost sa growth, actually inisip ko kanina parang hindi na rin niya aabutin ng ganon na growth. Kasi dati nyo naalala nyo pag tinitingnan pa natin sa national income accounts, anong lumaki? Paper. Oo nga, kasi may printing. Wala na eh. SOCMED na eh. Diba? Kaya ang nilalakihan na lang nila yung vote buying. Diba? Tsaka syempre yung social media and media. So ganun parang nagnanarrow na rin kung ano yung kayang i-boost pa nung spending. Pero definitely malakihan pa rin yung election vote buying and cheating.
So we have a write-in question. So ano-anong domestic policies and or US-Philippine agreements ang nag-aproba or nagpapahintulot sa operation ng Luzon Economic Corridor and Taxilica?
Sige. Actually, sobrang dami. Pero kung specifically regarding halimbawa yung liberalization of the foreign investment regime to allow foreign investors to go to Pax Silica, is the usual suspects. The Foreign Investment Act, the BCDA law, the Special Economic Zone Act, tapos in terms of yung mga particular fiscal incentives, the CREATE law, the CREATE More law, those are generic foreign investment liberalization laws that are applicable to any operator there. Nakita ko dun sa kanina lang, sabi ni Rosby ng salita sa BCDA, one of the mga true or false niya is may exceptionalism dun sa Pax Silica. Well, he claims walang ibang bagong law kundi those operating. So those are the basic laws, plus all the dapat nag-apply to all corporations, labor code, all the environmental regulations, local government regulations, they're going to be applicable. Pero siguro, maybe 3 particular laws na mukhang niluluto or may particular gain for Pax Silica, yung amendments dun sa Renewable Act na yung pwedeng 100% foreign investments in renewables that actually creates opportunity kung wala silang tiwala sa mga local investors, that creates opportunity for foreign energy firms to set up to provide for Pax Silica. So I think that's one particularity. Nagkaroon din ng chismis na dinig ko yun na an interview sa BCDA, yung pag-create ng new regulatory setup for nuclear energy sa Philippines. Hindi siya liberalization per se, but it creates the legal framework to operate nuclear plants. Yung US apparently, marami sila mga micronuclear reactors na on-call, mabilis i-set up, can provide so many gigawatts of energy. So maybe those are 2 particular laws na we'll see naman eh. If they set up, if a foreign firm, renewable firm sets up, that will be an example, I think.
Dagdag ko rin yung PPP. Yung Luzon Economic Corridor, yung mga binanggit ko po kaninang railways, ay nakalista naman na, I think 3 years ago pa, doon sa infrastructure flagship projects, IFPs ng, anong pangalan na nga nito? Department of Development. Oo. DepDev, oo. Nakalista na siya doon na sila ay mga infra projects enabled by the PPP code. Kasi si Duterte kasi, mas leaning siya noon sa GAA, pagkuha ng pera sa GAA, then I think karamihan ODA. Itong si Bongbong Marcos, mas leaning siya sa PPP as a manner no, ng pagbibigay ng infrastructure projects sa dayuhan at saka sa mga oligarchs. At in fact, mas leaning siya sa unsolicited. Ibig sabihin, hindi naman hinihingi ng gobyerno, pero ikaw nagmamagaling ka, nagpatayo ka. So, galing, di ba? So the menu is really open, so liberalized. So yun yung mga at work sa LEC. Yung sa Paxilica, yun nag-e-exist. Kaya nga yung sinasabi ni Bingkang, yung si BCDA, na wala naman tayong nilalabag na batas. O kasi lahat bukas ka na, te. Diba? So lahat naman na yun ay, mo na lang. Ang pinalulutang na lang talaga nila ay immunity. Sovereignty, di ba? Na ang US, pwede ba? US territory nito, parang Rojas Boulevard lang. Ganon, yun yung pinalulutang nila. Nasa akin ay dapat paingayin natin kasi ang estilo ng mga yan, magpalutang ng idea hanggang mag-settle sa inyo na okay lang. Diba?
Sige, go ahead.
They're not laws. Ewan ko kung may abogado dito. I don't actually know how binding the other agreements are. Pero it was flashed very quickly kanina. Very specific eh. There's a joint vision statement, US-Philippines on defense industrial cooperation, March 2025. There's a US-Philippines MOU on critical minerals, Feb 2026. And there's also a US-Philippines bilateral defense guidelines, May 2023. So may ganun agreements. There's also a multilateral agreement, Statement of Principles for Indo-Pacific Defense Industrial-Based Collaboration, May 2024. So one of the sites there, nilista naman yun. Siguro ang gusto lang i-highlight, thanks to the internet, nakapaghalongkat yung ibon ng National Defense Authorization Act for 2026 sa US. At for the first time ever, the NDA requires annual reports to Congress sa implementation ng US na agreements na to. That also allows for up to $1.5 billion in loans and grants per year. Kung gusto nyo ng context, the total military assistance ng US sa Philippines over the last decade is only about 1.6, 1.7 billion. So, just to highlight how seriously the US is taking Paxilica, how seriously the US is taking this whole defense industrial cooperation thing, and really, they're putting their money where their mouth is. So I think that should be all the more alarm bells for us na the Philippine government should take a stronger stand because the US is so serious about what their intentions are, what their bad intentions are for the Philippines.
So, did you want? Okay, all right. So we're gonna, we can get a question from the audience, if anyone, right here.
So, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Kira de la Cruz. I'm a graduating student here in UP School of Economics. I was also a part of SCSC, the student council that is co-partnering the event, and I'm a member of League of Filipino Students here in Diliman. So my question is more of a technical inquiry, so I'll just get straight to it. How do we pursue a national industrialization? What economic policies must be prioritized, and what changes in the system must happen?
Natakot ako sa tanong.
Sani yan, pangarap ni Sani yan. Siya lang.
Okay. Kung first principles, the most important thing is the Philippines has to develop Filipino firms producing with Filipino science and technology. Parang absolute bare minimum yun as a first principle. There won't be any such thing as an industrialization strategy if that is not the end goal. Kung yun ang end goal at may clarity doon, oh my God, there's so many things that have to be done to support Filipino firms achieving that kind of goal. What can be done? Well, may long list kanina, there's a slide, but ako ang favorite ko yung mga performance requirements for foreign investors eh. Favorite ko siya kasi all the free trade agreements and all the relevant World Trade Organization agreements in this neoliberal globalization period, meron silang specific portion, ban on performance requirements. So I love that kasi sinabi nila outright yung ayaw nila gawin ng mga third world countries, backward countries, underdeveloped countries, neo-colonial countries. Performance requirements are, if a foreign investor comes here, mandatory technology transfer. Controls on where they hire labor, how much labor they hire. Controls on where they spend their money, how much they can spend it. Basically, capital controls din yan. Controls dun sa how they operate, making sure that local procurement or may local value added. So, those are perfect, I think, yung paglista nila in all those agreements, literally about 1,200 free trade agreements have that ban and performance requirements because that's exactly what we need. And I think, siguro, last point lang, what needs to be done for that? Okay, it would be nice if we had a natural constituency for industrialization. If we had some kind of aspiring Filipino semiconductor firm, that'd be great. If I had some kind of aspiring AI firm in the Philippines, that'd be great. Pero sa akin, not having that material base, because sinira talaga siya over the last 40 years, it falls down to political leadership with the vision for national industrialization. And by political leadership, I mean not just a particular political leader, pero syempre, yung broad public constituency demanding the difficult things that need to be done for industrialization. It literally takes decades. Natuwa talaga ako dun sa looking at the 5-year plans of China. They were that far thinking. Mid-2000s pa sila, they wanted to be where they are now to semiconductors. They did that. Every industrialization experience, China, South Korea, Taiwan, even the US, you're talking about 20, 30, 40 years of discipline, determined, trial and error. The big question sa atin, do we have the political leaders with that kind of discipline and consistency? Pero, yung naka-depress kay Rosby, they don't care. They're not squabbling over what to do for the economy. They're squabbling over who takes power. And sa akin, that's what we have to fix. So I think the main pressure will have to come from building the public constituency, demanding a radical rethink of these really super bankrupt, obsolete, dead neoliberal free market policies.
Okay. Naawa naman ako kay Sunny kasi ang iksi ng oras niya. Pero we went to this forum with the small businessmen, Filipino businessmen, and he has this beautiful slide on step by step how to do it. To answer the students' question. Kasi parang hindi siya pangarap, pero very practical yung paano siya step by step. And may principle, di ba? Ways and means kamo, di ba? So may ways and may means, etc. Pero idadagdag ko na lang dahil maiksi yung oras niya. Actually, national industrialization, kalakip niya yung agrarian development and rural industrialization. Lalo na sa Pilipinas. Kami sa IBON, pag wala kaming magawa, ang discussion namin is, ikaw, anong uunahin mo? Di ba? Anong uunahin mong i-industrialize? And you come to realize that you are talking about rural industrialization. Ako, unahin ko talaga yung yung pang-araro, based on making steel or agricultural equipment, etc. Tapos naalala ko dito si Gani Tapang, sabi niya, ako unahin ko yung precision instruments. Kiluhan lang di ba? Nagkakataluhan lang tayo sa kiluhan di ba? Ng kopra, So, libre mangarap. Mangarap tayo ng pinakamalataas na pangarap para sa Pilipinas. At yan ay nagsisimula sa kung ano nang meron tayo. So that when you look at the slide ng sinasabi ng mga principles, ways, and means ng pambansang industrialisasyon, alam natin na doable siya at kaya natin siyang gawin. With the state, sabi mo State, political will, pero bigger than the state, but syempre, push siya ng isang kilusang masa.
Thank you. So we have our last two questions. Both are written. For our first, or for our second to the last question, Marcos is expected to highlight the UMIC, or the upper middle income country milestone. What specific metric should the public demand he address instead of GDP, gross domestic product, and GNI, or gross national income?
Alam mo kung pwede, I want to totally get rid of growth as a measure of success. It doesn't mean anything. What should economic development be? Actually, even yung industrialization, agricultural development, there's all means to an end eh. So sa akin, if it is possible to totally reorient economics textbooks, economic managers thinking, even the public thinking, to get away with this obsession of growth as the metric for development, super panalo. What do we want? We want people to lead better lives. In the current economy right now, na market provide the mga goods and services, they need to have a certain level of income. They need to have jobs. They need to be able to get education, healthcare, housing, complete basic needs. Sa akin, if it would be possible to get rid of GDP, GNI, or growth as a metric of success, focus on people's well-being, the growth, it could be zero. It could be super small, but if people's well-being is improved, that's development. And actually, and I'm not overstating it, kasi if there's one thing that actually might be stopping us to thinking about what really matters, kaya ang ganda ng question, it's because it's so convenient, there's a psychological comfort, di ba? Na every quarter, may number ka. Oh, are things getting better or not? It's so convenient, it's so simple, psychologically, madali mo maintindihan yan, madali paliwanag, but it doesn't mean anything. Case in point, the Philippines. So pag UMIC natin, we grew in a way that destroyed Philippine agriculture, made Philippine industry even more eroded, created joblessness, forced Filipinos abroad. But natin katutuwa yung rapid economic growth over the 2005-2016 period. But natin katutuwa yung rebound ng economy after the COVID. So honestly, growth, at best, bonus na lang yan. Yung sinasabi nila, yeah, but you need to grow the pie and distribute it. That's nonsense. If you're not creating the jobs, the incomes, improving the welfare, whatever growth you're getting doesn't mean anything. So sa akin, people's welfare, there's some very simple metrics for that. Growth, kung pwede basura natin, it doesn't mean anything, and it's used to hide all sorts of sins. It's used to hide all sorts of poverty, all sorts of misery, all sorts of inequality, all sorts of concentration, economic power, and political power. Yeah, kung pwede ka, hindi yan degrowth, it's an anti-growth perspective. But that's just me. Bad mood na ako eh.
Don't get me started on degrowth. Ako in-imagine ko yung survey ng Vietnam when it was building its economy. Yung survey niya ganito eh, kumain na ba ang lahat? Nakakain na ba lahat? Check. Na-enroll na ba lahat ng 7 years old at pataas? Check. Di ba hindi naman growth yun? Di ba? It's about, it's a measure of welfare. Rights and welfare, kasi edukasyon, karapatan yan. So yung gano'n. Tapos, ilan ang hindi nakapasok sa ICU, na kailangan ma-ICU. Kapag ka may number, at yun ay lumaki, ang sakit. Diba? Ang sakit sa kanila. Ganon yung economic planning ng isang matinong gobyerno. Hindi siya yung naghahabol lagi ng paglago, naghahabol ng pagpasok, ng mga investments or nakatingin sa importation, kung na-import na ba natin lahat ng bigas kasi wala na tayong mga magsasaka. Hindi ganon, di ba? So, sana ganon, no? Pero, dahil hindi ganon, at nandito naman tayo sa School of Economics. Yes, Lawrence. Don't give me an answer that will make me happy. Joke lang. Yung parang, sabi ni Sunny, let's look for a paradigm na ang nasa heart talaga niya ay yung human progress, human development, yung kanyang yung kagalingan ng citizens.
Thank you. So for our last question, also written, is there still hope to effectively communicate to the masses amidst this information so that we can really form a strong, united front to change the system? Yes. Yes. Okay, that's all for today. I'm just kidding.
Kaya ba nag-isip si Rosby? Since palagi hope isn't a strategy, pero hope is our strength talaga eh. Ako, I don't think any of us sa IBON, and I don't think any of you would get up in the morning and actually care about your lives kung wala kayong hope talaga. How do we communicate yung what are messages against this information? Actually, sa akin, kung may one message lang na mahalaga mo communicate, one thing we should start from before we start crafting that message, realize those in power are fooling us. They're fooling us na hindi pwede magdagdag ng sahod kasi mawawalan kayong trabaho, mabamakarote kami. They're fooling us. They're fooling us na we can't afford to give free education, free housing, free healthcare because we can't afford it. Kaso naman, grabing tilyon-tilyong piso to support special economic zones with infrastructure, to support big business, hindi na ako support barrel. So, in so many ways, niloko tayo ng those in power. Sa akin, if you start from realizing a lot of the mga premises we've been taught are wrong, on a day-to-day basis, every laban, yung nabanggit ni Francesca kanina, yung mga demands na yun, yung mga laban na yun, that becomes more concrete. And sa akin, hindi pa i-communicate sa kanila yung message is that give reality dun sa mga struggles na yon. Kasi kapag buhay na yung mga struggle na yon, nag-iingay tayo, we're communicating. Kung maging matagumpay tayo sa struggle, that's the best communication with action. So ako, coming from the premise na kailangan talaga bakahin yung sobrang daming panloloko, panlililang sa atin, there's no alternative, globalization's the best. I mean, let's deconstruct those things in our head that liberates us to do so many things, lalo sa mga concrete struggles nga nasabi ni Francesca kanina. Action. It's the best communication.
Yes. Actually, yes. Pareho. Touch grass, ganyan. Kasi binabasa ko, touch grass. Binabasa ko yung tanong, yung parang gusto niyang mag-shout above the disinformation to reach the masses, right? Tapos yung dulo pala ng tanong is to form a united front. Okay, united front pala yung fino-form mo. Di bumaba nga tayo sa masa. Diba? And we cannot fight disinformation by just, shouting information. We have to, arouse, mobilize, organize.
Sige, that was our last question for today. So before we go on to the next final part of our program, let's hear muna yung parting shots mula sa two speakers natin. 2 minutes each daw. Kaya mo yan, Sunny.
Okay. Ako, hindi ako magpapa-intimidate sa power ng moderator. Sa akin, pinaka-parting shot ko, nasa School of Econ tayo. Yung tinuturo sa School of Econ at most schools of economics, hindi yun na economics. I think sa akin yung parting shot ko, panghawakan natin, panindigan natin, pwede magka-ekonomiya na sapat ang binibigay sa lahat. Binibigay lahat ng pangailangan, sagot lahat ng whatever, education, health, housing, pagkain, dignity, pwede mangyari yon. May sapat na rekurso sa mundo, may sapat na kaalaman sa mundo, may sapat na tao sa mundo para maglikha ng ekonomiya na para sa lahat. So sa akin, i-disabuse natin yung ekonomiya para sa eksperto. All the more, ang ekonomiya ay hindi merkado. Ang ekonomiya ay hindi pinagkakitaan. Ang ekonomiya ay hindi big business or small business, tubo. Ekonomiya ay making sure lahat ng rekurso na meron sa mundo, ginagamit natin para bigyan ng lahat ng pangailangan ng lahat ng mga tao. So, yun ang economics sa akin. Let's just, not be suckered by the economics na tinuturo sa atin. Marami dyan ay mali. 99% dyan ay mali. economics graduate yung tumatawa dito.
Okay, sige. Matindi yung krisis sa mundo. Baka hindi na tayo ulit magkita-kita. Joke lang. Sana makatalo pa kayo kahit may gera na. Hindi. Ano siya, hinahamon niya tayo. Alam mo yung isang araw ay meron akong naririnig lang, no? Kwento sa akin, nag-meeting halimbawa yung mga organization sa Central Luzon. Tapos sabi ko, mahahamon ang rehiyon. Gets nyo? Kasi china-challenge tayo ng gera at ng krisis na taasan talaga yung ating mga organizing skills, yung ating yung tanong kanina, yung information and prop skills natin, ganun-ganun. Na sa tingin ko, kung hanggat nag-aaral tayo ng kalagayan ng ating bayan at hanggat naidadala natin dun sa ating mga kasama, ay lumalawak yung knowledge na makakaagapay or makaka-fight doon sa global crisis and the imperialist war. Tapos naisip ko, oh my God, mag-e-election sa 2028. Huwag na tayong masyadong nakaano sa mga ganon, winry, mga ganon. Konting ano naman, di ba? Konting taas naman ng diskurso, ang lalim ng krisis natin. Yun lang.
Thank you, Rosby and Sani, for your parting shots. Okay. So, before we go to our final part of the program, which is the final cultural performance, we just have a few announcements. Direk, aside from this announcement, I also announced the other ones na naka-line up. Okay, mamaya pa. Sorry. So before we go to our final cultural performance, support tayo ang movie Ganggang by Direk J.L. Burgos. August 7 on Cinemalaya. A movie about fighting society's big bullies, as we were just talking about. So let's support everybody. So without further delay, he is the lead vocalist and guitarist for the Jerks. Woo! As well as a current member of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines, or CAP. Let's please give a warm welcome to Chikoy Pura.
Testing. Magandang hapon sa inyo lahat. Nakaka-inspire mo rin naman yung panelist natin at saka yung moderator. Yun yung pinaka-pala ko. Pakitanggal ng chorus ba yan or shifter? Sa tulog ng gitara. Anyway, gawin na natin. Itong awitin na ito ay ginawa ko nung panahon ng Duterte. Kasi kasagsagan ng tokhang. At parang hindi rin nagbago, ano? Ang dami pa rin tumutugba sa kali. At sila pa rin yung, kumbaga, yung culprits na gusto pa rin nila yung i-impose yung ganong sistema ng pag-gobyerno na naka-anchor sa takot. Yung ganong klase, hindi sa respeto, hindi sa dignidad, hindi sa pagiging pakas. Kaya ang dami nating challenges na kakaharapin. Hindi lang dito, pati sa labas. Kasi ang daming katulad ni Duterte. Pinamumunahan na ito ni Donald Trump, yung gano'n, yung tsaka yung mga minions nila. Anyway, pati yung World Cup ay pinakikialaman. Di ba? Yung ganong klase. Di ba? Maglalaro ka na lang ng football, meron ba politika? Anyway, eto, pamagan dito sa madilim na sulok ng kasaysayan.
Sulok ng kasaysayan, nakatambak ang mga katawan, mga imbit ng hagundol at higaan, katabi ng pagkat, sa madilim na sulok ng kasaysayan. Sa trono ng buktot ng kamahalan ay mga ulo ng mga naglaban, pinatulan ng kamatayan sa madilim na sulok ng kasaysayan, sa madilim na sulok ng kasaysayan. Sunod na bayan sa silangan, sulok ng kasaysayan, marinig ang mga sigawan, nakataas mga kamay na nabahira, ng rugo na masigabong palakpakan, sa madilim na sulok ng kasaysayan. Sa mga mura at kapastusan,
Pero susunod na awitin na medyo revised na version at mas mabagal. Kasi tungkol to doon sa genocide na nangyayari sa Gaza. Na hanggang sa ngayon ay tuloy-tuloy. At hindi mo akalain na sa sinasabi nila civilized na tayo. Pero meron palang natitirang remnant nung ano tawag doon, kalupitan ng panahon. Pamagat ito ay Rage for Palestine. Children dying under rubble and fire, death and destruction in Palestine. People dehumanize and occupy Gaza in flames. It's our time. Dreams are shattered by bombing raids. The streets are littered with the innocent and the dead. There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. It's ethnic cleansing, it's genocide. Palestinian child, right into the heavens cry. Go not gently, go not gently, go not gently and praise with me. Go not gently, go not gently, go not gently and praise with me. War machines unleashed on a defenseless race, murder disguised in self-defense, while the world hides its head under the sand. Darkness descends on stolen land. On stolen land. Go not champion to the night. Race against the dying of the light. Sing a lullaby to a Palestinian child. Right into the heavens cry. Go not gently, go not gently, go not gently. Go not gently, go not gently, go not gently and pray with me. Go not gently out to the night. Right against the dying of the light. Sing a lullaby to a Palestinian child. Right until the heavens cry, until the heavens cry, until the heavens cry, let the heavens cry.
Hello, sorry, Kate. So before we formally close, sorry, we just have a few more announcements before we formally close our program. That would be awesome. Mag-jam pa rin tayo. So first of all, check out our latest research publications, Urban Stories Chapter 2, Resurgence, and Controlling the Cure, Big Pharma and the Philippines Pharmaceutical Trap. Tapos, these are our latest publications. Tapos, coming soon po, yung July 2026, Usapang Ibon Primer, which will be coming out soon. So, let's all await that. For further orders and inquiries, you may approach the Ibon Book Stand by the entrance, visit the Ibon Bookshop at 114 Timog Avenue, Quezon City, or contact us online through the bookshop Facebook page. Tapos, Ibon Bookshop or our products are also available on Shopee and Lazada. Tapos, of course, after this forum, you're all welcome to enjoy the photo booth outside in our lobby area. So, for our closing, we would just like to thank everyone that has made this forum, Birdtalk Forum, possible. First of all, thank you to our two speakers, Rosby Guzman at Sunny Africa, our two reactors, Lorenzi and Ma'am Kitwe, to our cultural performances that also added and lifted our forum, Mara Peralta at Chico Ipura. And of course, thank you to all our audience and participants. We also like to thank our co-presenters, UP School of Economics Student Council, UP Student Council, UP Office of the Student Regent, UP Office of the Faculty Regent, and all UP Academic Employees Union, and of course, Alter Media, and special thanks to the UP School of Economics and its staff. And thank you to our partners, and of course, our audience here and online. So thank you again. Congrats to everybody for your participation in this forum. But before we part ways, can we have a class picture? Can we have a picture taking together? So I believe our photographer is Harold, one of our interns for IBON. So let's... Wait, compress? Compress tayo, guys. Oh, so may tong. May tong. Thank you. Ay, oh. Akala ko snacks na eh. Okay, thank you sa lahat. May snacks in the lobby area, and please enjoy our book stand and photo booth. Thank you, everybody.
Upper middle income consider themselves poor.
Dagdag singil sa kuryente.
Sa ngalan ng ayuda, rising prices of petroleum.
Enrique Razon coming on top.
De La Rosa at large
Concedes the chamber's leadership.
balikatan exercises
the U.S.-led tax silicon
will be blooded.
Tulpo pa na ang pangungurakot